open your mind.
The good doctor is in the house. The house. The house. The good doctor. The good doctor.
Open your mind.
In the house. The house. The house. The good doctor in the house. The house. The house. The house.
Open your mind.
And peace, folks. Welcome back to another edition of the Proper Thought series right here on the old T.P.O.T YouTube page. I'm your host, X, of course, but you knew that already. That's why your black asses are here. Tonight, as you can see, it's the Ask the Doc series where we bring up medical personnel, PhDs and MDs and such, and they come up and you know, they talk whatever their craft is. We chop it up a little bit, and then they take your questions. So special guest in the house tonight, a brother that I have a lot of respect for, the one and only Doc Phoenix. But before we get started, y'all know I always start the stream off with thanking you good folks out there and the good folks that hang out in here. Because I realize, man, you don't have to show up to these damn streams. You don't have to watch them. You don't have to be here every Wednesday and Thursday. You don't have to like, you don't have to share, you don't have to subscribe, and you definitely don't have to drop your hard-earned pennies, nickels, dimes, quarters, and 50-cent pieces, or silver dollars for that matter. But you good folks, man, y'all choose to do so, man. And y'all have supported me so much, and I know I get up here sometime and say some shit you don't like, but even with that, y'all still hang in there with me. So, it must be something you like about the show, because you stick around, and I want y'all to know, man, that I appreciate y'all folks, man. I don't take you for granted. I never have. I never will. All right. I don't take you lightly. Never have, never will. So I just want you to know, man, I'm humbled, I'm honored, I'm appreciative, and I thank you, good folks. All right. All right. So let's get at it. Let me bring in the good Doc Phoenix. Doc Phoenix.
Good evening, T.P.O.T. How are you?
Peace, brother. How are you, man?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well.
Thank you for accepting, my brother. There's quite a few.
Thank you for having me on.
There's quite a few things I want to talk to you about. First and foremost, the vaccine. I have gotten it. I got my final jab on it was like 2 weeks ago. Yeah, about 2 weeks ago I got my final, so didn't feel anything, didn't really, nothing. I mean, so far so good. Got my fingers crossed, y'all. If y'all don't see me next week, I'm probably dead, but so far so good, folks. So and I took the Pfizer. I didn't take the Moderna, and I definitely
Okay.
wasn't take the Johnson and Johnson because we had a big thing down here with that, man. They had to send like, I don't know, I think it was like 1.5 million doses they had to send back, I think. Yeah, it's just a crisis down here with that, man. So I was like, nah, I can't mess with the J&J, man. I'm hearing too much bad stuff, too much bad stuff.
Yeah,
So
it hasn't exactly been the cleanest rollout of
no,
a vaccine
yep,
in recent history. So no. Ironically, the J&J vaccine is produced along the same lines as the Ebola vaccine that was developed a few years back.
mm,
Um, when that was used in Central Africa a few years ago when President Obama was still in office, when they had the Ebola crisis a few years ago.
okay,
So same technology, basically an adenovirus based technology. So basically, you kind of get in a very weakened virus that has the SARS-CoV-2 virus in it, and so when it gets injected into you, it goes into the cells of your body, and then your cells produce the antibodies against COVID. That's how it do. But I do know that there were a lot of issues around concerns about blood clots developing in potential in folks who were vaccinated with the J&J vaccine, and typically those were really those concerns were really for people who were more who were 40 and above for the most part. When
mm,
you typically didn't see that in younger folks, but again, those concerns were more or less for individuals who were older than 40, 40 years of age.
mm, yeah. I mean, everybody asked, they were asking, they were at,
Mhm.
what happened? Do this, that. And I just pretty much tell, people, not on YouTube, in the real world.
Mhm.
And, I said, I feel fine when I got the first shot though. And I think I talked to, Lady Nicole about
Mhm.
this. When I got the first shot, I had a little twinge of a headache and it lasted for like maybe 15 minutes and then it went away. The second shot, I still had somewhat of a headache, but it was very, very minute and
Mhm.
it only lasted for 5 minutes. And then that was it. I haven't felt anything else since. And like I said, I got my last shot, like 2 weeks ago. So
Yeah,
I feel fine.
and those are expected side effects. I got the Moderna vaccine.
Mm,
So, you know, when I got the first shot, I think my arm was a little sore for a few days. Probably a bit more. It was a bit more sore than if I had gotten something more of a regular vaccine, like a flu or something like that. It was a little bit more sore than that. But other than that, I didn't really have any problems. When I got the second shot, I was a little queasy, but it passed within like an hour, and I was all right. You know,
mm.
ain't didn't never had a problem since. So it was just one of those. It's one of those things. Every vaccine just comes with some side effects. I mean, even whether anytime you have any form of a medical treatment, there typically are some side effects that are associated with any type of treatment that includes vaccines as well.
Mhm.
Um, and so I think all those things that can be expected. Now, when you get you say you got the Pfizer, were you monitored for a period of time to make sure there weren't any serious adverse reactions, anything like that?
Um, no, because it was one of those outdoor things, like,
Okay.
you pull up, underneath like it's like a canopy that you pull your
Hmm.
car under, and they just pretty much do it right in your car. They roll that
Okay.
you roll down the window, they do it, at the car, and they make you sit for 15 minutes. Um, I think if the people have, because they have a 15-minute area, then they have a 30-minute area. I guess the 30-minute people, the 30-minute
Those are
area is for high
yeah,
risk people or something.
yeah,
They
yeah.
make you
That
sit. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's
Hit it.
exactly what I meant. Yeah, so they have that period where they monitor you for about
Yep.
15. If you were low risk, it's about 15 minutes. If it's if you were in a higher risk group, you're about 30 minutes, maybe a little longer, but generally these were, people who were higher risk were generally folks who were older. I would say around, if you were over 50, I think they put you kind of sort of in that. Um,
Hell
uh,
no, they didn't. Because shoot, goddamn it, I was in something called Group 4, and they
really?
were doing groups like 1, 2, 3, 4, and guess
Okay.
what? 4 is the last. So I was put in Group 4,
Oh,
and yeah, they put me in Group 4 because they ask you all these questions. Because I had an app on my phone. Like when I got there,
okay.
the they scanned the phone and they pulled up my name and all that shit. And I went
Mhm.
in there and they hit me in the arm and they said, do your app. And the app actually, counts down and it'd be like, it'd be asking you questions and all that kind of shit. And they put a
Okay.
thing on your car. They put a thing
No.
on your car and they monitor you for like 15 minutes. When your app run down, if ain't
Mhm.
nothing wrong, you can leave.
Oh
So,
no, that's pretty convenient, and I think that's how
oh
it
yeah,
should be. I mean, so the
yeah,
the app probably asks you a series of questions that pre-screened you,
yep,
and so they wanted to see if you had any existing conditions, high blood pressure,
yeah,
diabetes.
all of that, all of that,
your typical
all of
stuff
that.
that you would expect. And so if you answer no, then yeah, they probably would put you in a low risk category. Now, obviously,
Yeah.
individuals who may have had like diabetes or had some maybe had a condition like a reactive airway disease like asthma or something like that.
Mhm.
They would definitely be put into a high risk category. But yeah, I mean that makes perfect sense. Actually, quite convenient. Ironically enough, for me, I didn't get it done through my through my place. I actually got it done at the VA, so
Mm.
it was kind of interesting. But the folks at the VA knew me anyway, so so
Well,
it's kind of
let me
interesting that way. So
let me ask you this, because I actually value your opinion, brother. I do.
mhm.
Do you think it's wise for? Because I know, to each his own. But what's your opinion? Do you think it's wise for us to go ahead and get the vaccines? Being that I've had it, you've had it, and I'm pretty sure other people have gotten it. Would you advise, you know, brothers, black folks in general, to get vaccinated?
Would I advise Black folks to get vaccinated? Yeah, I
Yes.
mean for the most part, if I would say for folks that for very I would say yes in general. Now obviously
Hmm.
there are going to be some caveats. Folks who might be older may have some pre-existing conditions. Folks who and arguably you can say they might be more at risk if they have a pre-existing condition or even if they're older. um but I would think for folks that are immunocompromised, yeah, you might want to I think you should strongly consider having the vaccine. In general, all people should consider getting the vaccine. Um, Again, I don't think there's going to be anything resembling what was pre-COVID normalcy without it.
Mm.
Um, it's just hard to believe that life will go back to what it was pre-COVID without a vaccine. Whether you have employers that mandate it, there's I'm hearing rumblings that there are schools around the country that are going to eventually mandate it for all students. So I mean, it would be highly unlikely that at some point, um, even if you're apprehensive to it, that there's going to be some mandate that maybe from your employer or if you're a student or whatever that may make that a requirement for being in those institutions or at that place of employment. So
Mm.
in general, I would urge people to go out there and get it. Yes, now I know everyone's kind of apprehensive because there was there was that hysteria that's been going on for the last couple months about blood clots and adverse reactions, and you had some folks that actually got the vaccine and then died with it a few days later. I mean you've had those stories out there, but I do urge people, despite the fact that there, I do understand there are voices out there that are saying that, well, these are just the ones we know about. What about the ones we don't know about? what people need to understand, if you're giving out 1 million doses of vaccines a day and you have maybe 15 or 20 people, even 100 people that have an adverse reaction, that doesn't necessarily mean that every single person that takes the vaccine is going to have an adverse reaction and is going to potentially be a life threatening. And specifically, it doesn't necessarily mean that, hey, I shouldn't get this because this may happen to me. Again, everyone is different. Everyone responds differently. Like you say, you got a headache. I never got a headache, not once. It
True.
very much depends on stuff. And I think a lot of times, a lot of people oftentimes are not quite honest about what they really have going on. Because oftentimes, especially if you ain't seen a doctor in a while, you haven't been to a medical professional in a while, you haven't had a primary care appointment or anything like that. So folks are not not necessarily I ain't gonna say not necessarily in tune, but it's highly improbable that folks don't have some clue as to whether or not what category they fit in when we were talking about the low risk, high risk, or maybe even folks that might be somewhere in between in that scenario. But nonetheless, again, this is one of these kind of sort of these gut check moments, really. If people want anything that resembles a normal pre-COVID life, the vaccine is going to be a pathway for it. That's just that is just the ifs, ands, and buts of.
Yeah. Because we talked about this. I mean, but we've been talking about this. I mean, we've been talking about this for like more than a year now. So, and we always talk about these things, and we talked about it being mandatory eventually to get into events. It's probably going to be on job applications at some point. So this is going to be a part of life in this country.
Absolutely. Well, I believe it was last week. You have was it the New York Yankees and the Texas Rangers? I believe they were letting people back into the stadiums. But what were they doing? People that didn't have the vaccine. What happened? They were vaccinating you at the at the stadiums. So you were buying tickets to see the game, and you was getting a vaccine at the same time. So whether it's just really one of these passive things that are just going to happen.
Yeah.
You just spent a few $100s on some baseball tickets, and hey, you want to see the game, you're gonna get the vaccine. And I think whether or not people are actively volunteering for this is just going to be a part of our lives. And especially given that you have these various strains of COVID that have been running around now for the past 6 months or so. So I mean, I don't see a pathway where, at some point these vaccines will be in the arm of just about every person in this country. It's just a natural path. You can't have a normal life without it. I mean, yeah. I mean, was it earlier today? I had gotten word of it, but earlier today, the CDC loosened its restrictions on who can wear masks versus who can't. Now, arguably, I'm kind of a little dubious about the way they presented it because it's kind of sort of a blanket opening. But I'm sure you probably heard earlier today that the CDC has said that it was okay for folks who are fully vaccinated to not wear masks indoors, and those who haven't need to continue to wear masks. But the problem is that who knows who's been vaccinated or who's not if you're not asking people to present proof of vaccination. And arguably, when you got yours,
I like you got a mark on you. It's not like you got a mark on you where they can look and be like, "Oh, yeah, okay, you got it."
Yeah, absolutely. And just when you got your vaccine, did they give you a card or something, a little CDC card or something like that, designating that you were?
Yeah, they gave me a card, and I had to bring it back when I came back the second time.
Yeah, for your second dose. Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't think they gave me it back.
Oh, they didn't
I,
give it back to you? Okay.
trying to think. I don't think they did. They gave me
Okay.
something else. They took the card and they gave me another little paper.
Yeah, you
So
should have
I
like
have that.
the
Yeah, I have
2 shot
that
dose.
paper.
Yeah.
Yeah, I put that paper, with like my important files,
Hmm.
because who knows, I might have to show it. Papers, please. They might start asking for papers like they do in other countries. Papers, please. Got to have them papers on you. They hit you in the head with the butt of that M16.
Yeah,
Them days might be coming, y'all. But let me ask you about this, Doc, because some of our people, because I know me, 4 people, all right, 4 people in my family got diagnosed with
mhm.
COVID. Now, luckily, they all survived, all right? They all survived. They're all fine now. But 4 people in my family came down with it. So,
Mhm.
what about those people, Doc? What about the people who had it? They've got better, because I've heard that you'll still test positive for it, after 2 months, after 3 months. I've heard of people being not in my family, they only had it once, but I've heard of people who contracted it twice. And I
Mhm.
mean, what's the deal once you have it and you get better? Don't you have some degree of protection from it the next time? At least that strain. Maybe not other strains, but that strain, you should be somewhat resistant to it, right? Or no?
That's kind of a yes and no answer because what has happened, at least what some of the data has shown, that people have thought that they had previously recovered from a COVID infection where they really didn't. It just got, let's say, suppressed. We'll just use the phrase, it got suppressed enough, and
Hmm.
then it would appear that they may have gotten reinfected in some cases, and in some cases some people may have gotten reinfected. So yes, now in terms of immunity, it is not readily known exactly how long, if you had COVID and you recovered, and how long that immunity will necessarily last. Will you have some form of immunity? Highly likely, yes. Um, Now, how long it lasts, no one really, that's kind of something that's up in the air. Even with vaccines, with the vaccines, it's not known exactly how long the vaccines will confer immunity, which is why if you've heard talk about needing booster shots, so you might have to get a booster shot yearly. If you go back to those earlier conversations we had way back early part of last year, I talked about this may be a seasonal vaccine rotation.
Yeah, like the flu shot.
Yeah.
You get people get the flu shot once a year. I don't get it. I've never gotten a flu shot. But
Mhm.
I know people that get a flu shot every single year. I've never gotten it. I know people get a pneumonia shot too, and
Yeah,
every
yeah.
year.
Typically,
I've never gotten that. Like, I don't know.
well,
I just never have.
well, you're typically not at the age that where you would have to get the pneumococcal vaccine. Typically, that's for folks who are usually 60 and older, um,
Okay.
because they're older individuals are more prone to developing contracting pneumonia. So you're not quite at the age where it would be something that they would really would require of you for the most part.
Mm,
Um,
okay.
but typically, for people who are under 60, obviously a flu vaccine would be would be recommended yearly. So no, I think in regards to the question, it is one of those things where really only time will tell. I mean, believe it or not, I know it feels like it's been a really long time, but it's just really been barely over a year now that
Yeah,
where
that's
we've
true.
really been dealing with COVID-19 and really the after effects of it. And so again, there's so much, obviously the data and research has been coming in pretty hot and heavy for the past year or so. But I mean, again, it's going to take more long-term studies, longitudinal studies to really see how long is immunity conferred, or if you have a vaccine, or even if you're someone that's recovered from it. It could be reasonably expected to say that you have somewhere around 6 months or so of immunity reasonably expected.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's what I've heard that, exactly what you're saying, Doc Phoenix. It's unknown. It may only be like 5, 6 months that you're protected. I've heard a lot of crap.
Mhm.
I've heard a lot of different stuff, man. So I did it. I wasn't sure when they first started talking about it. I wasn't sure, but I did download the app, and once you fill out the questionnaire, it kind of reminds you. It lets you know, oh, we're doing group 1 this week. Next month we're doing group 2 and 3. The end of the month we're doing group 4. So I was like, oh shit, it's gonna be a while. But once my time came up, they hit me on the app and was like, you can go to X, Y, and Z, and get vaccinated. So the second week that it opened up for the group that they had me assigned to, I went and got the first shot, and got the second one 2 weeks ago, and I'm still alive. You know, I actually had as a matter of fact, I had Lady Nicole up here, I think right before I was going to take the first shot. And I was
Mhm.
telling her, I said, if y'all don't see me up here next week, that mean the damn jab killed me. Yeah, I think I had her up here right before. Yeah, I think it
Mhm.
was like right before I was about to take the shot. And I was telling her, I was like, I'm about to go take this shot. What's going to happen? All of that. She was like, oh, X, you'll be fine. So I feel
Everyone
okay.
everyone I know that has taken the has gotten the vaccine have not had any problems. I mean, it's yes, it is just one of these things where I don't think there's going to be any true way to really get around it. It this is unfortunately going to be a part of our lives. I mean, whether people will accept that or not, but that's just one of those things where, at least
Mm,
in terms of this virus, we're gonna have to be essentially get accustomed to.
yeah, that's true. That's true. But I have been taking your advice, over the years, Doc Phoenix. I actually go to the doctor now, stuff like that. So, staying away from the meat. The only meat I eat is fish. I eat tuna from time to
Mhm.
time, but I'm staying away from the meat. I still hate broccoli. I will die if I have to. If the only thing that's gonna save my life is broccoli, I'm gonna be dead, y'all, because I hate that shit. But I do, I'm more vegetables and stuff. Every now and then a little bit of pasta, and I don't put a lot of sauce on it. I put like oregano or, a little bit of garlic on it, something like that. So, I'm actually trying to eat healthier, do things healthier. And I feel better too. I feel better. I feel better since I've stopped eating that stuff. I just feel better, you know. I do. I have more energy, which I need now that the season is up,
Mhm.
so it came at the right time. And like I said, I feel a lot better, man. I sleep better too. I sleep better. All that stuff happened. Now it took like 2 months of not eating the meat to like see the effects and feel the effects. But now it's just a normal thing. Now I don't even think about it. But I gotta have some tuna from time to time, and I like trout. I
Well,
like steamed trout or baked trout. But
yeah. Well, in general, meat products are more. Um, they take more
murderous.
energy. Well, they take more energy from the body to digest.
Mm,
So, you know, essentially the process of digestion really takes you take somewhat of a semi-solid product like meat, like a steak, for example, and it has to be converted into a liquid form so that it's easily absorbed into the body. And so that takes a lot of energy. So when you're not eating as much red meat, your body is not devoting as much energy to digestion of red meat. So therefore, you probably you won't feel that sluggishness,
yeah,
that sort of that malaise that oftentimes comes along with, you know,
yeah.
I think colloquially people call it the itis.
Ah, yeah, yeah. that kind of goes away, man. It goes away. It just
Yeah.
does. You eat and you get up and you go and you do, what you're doing. I don't eat a lot anyway. I only eat like twice a day, but depending on what's going on, if I
Mhm.
hadn't eaten anything in the morning, I will have, lunch, and then, when I come home, my wife cooks dinner or whatever. So I do eat at least twice a day. But, I try to, I try to portion it out. I eat fruits. I eat a lot of fruits and stuff, that kind of stuff. Because I got to have something sweet. God damn it. Can't deny me all sugar ever, forever. So, I do eat a lot of fruits, like apples and oranges and things like that. I eat a lot of those, pears, eat a lot of those. But, anything else, like I said, every now and then is a little bit of pasta. But I stay away from the meat, man. Sometimes, man, we put some salmon, we put it on the grill, we grill it, so that's my meat right there, or some trout. That's the only meat I have, and I don't eat that every day. So that's like special. You celebrate. Oh shit, it's trout night. You celebrate it. So it's one of those things, Doc Phoenix. But I feel
Mhm.
better, man. Just like you said, the itis, don't have that. That's gone. I mean, it's working for me. I'm not saying that it'll work for everybody or, because I don't know shit about your damn body. I only know about mine. But it works for me, y'all. So, I'm just saying. I'm just saying it does work for me. So let me ask you this, Doc.
Mhm.
If you're well, we know that, because we often talk about obesity and stuff like that, on the internet. Are you more likely you're more likely to get a worse case of it if you're already an obese person, right? Obesity is one of the main things that kind of affects it, right?
Yeah, so obesity in general is one of the major risk factors um for higher mortality associated with COVID
Hmm.
and just a higher risk in general of having a more of a serious adverse case of COVID, if you will. So just in general, being obese creates a lot of stress on the body. Period. Your body is
Yeah.
always in a constant state of what we call inflammation, which is which is sort of a process that becomes pathogenic when it's prolonged. In the short term, it's a good process because it actually helps to activate the immune system, but over the long term, it actually becomes pathogenic, meaning it causes disease.
Mm,
So this is why you see obese people who have, they're at high risk for everything, whether it's diabetes, cardiovascular disease, hypertension, heart attacks, strokes, peripheral artery disease, um, uh, you name it. So I think I think part of the problem in general is that obesity in of itself is something that it just in general just puts you at a higher risk for everything, whether
mm,
that's not just COVID, not just having these adverse effects of COVID and higher mortality associated with COVID, but just in general when you're looking at just the overall uh, uh, health perspectives in general, just being obese makes everything a lot more difficult, if you
hmm. And brother AM1, I'm not ignoring your question, but I'll ask it. Just type it back in there when we get to the question, ask the doc segment. All right. When we get to the question, just ask it again, brother. I'm not ignoring your question. But yeah, because I know that well actually I should say I know that a lot of the people in this area that contracted it and died, I think like close to the ones that weren't over 60, I believe the bulk of them were people who were obese. I believe, or overweight. A lot of them who died. I'm not going to say all of them, but a very considerable number of them were they were obese. I'm talking about, in the immediate, area where I live. So, because they had like I mean, in the paper, you see it every day in the paper, the people's faces, like it's just so many people, so many pictures of people, like the people who had died of it. Man, you saw it every single day. It was like the craziest of things, man. It was. But I know a lot of the people that died because that's what they were harping on. The overseeing medical folks, the people who are in charge for the health of the state, they
Hmm.
were on TV practically every single day. They were on TV every single day talking about the people who had died, talking about the mass, talking about that they were on TV every single day, and they were coming across my ticker as well on my phone. So you saw these people every single day. They were telling you about COVID every single day. They were telling you about the number of people who died every single day. They were showing their pictures every single day. I mean, it just, like you said, I don't think it's going to ever get back to the way it was. I just don't see that. Um, it's going to be a new normal. A new normal's coming. It's going to be a new normal, man. Unfortunately, and it's not going anywhere. I don't think it's going anywhere. Um, I just don't think it is. But well, now that the the COVID thing, we got these vaccines, that's all over the place that they're spitting out. Um, from what I understand, the cases are dropping slightly, right, Doc? Doc Phoenix?
I'm sorry. Say that again. TPOT. I didn't quite catch that. Say that.
No, what I was saying is the numbers are dropping. The cases are dropping, right?
Yes, yes.
Oh,
Across the board and pretty much across every state, you've seen a pretty substantial drop in the number of new COVID-19 cases. Yes, so and I think that's attributed to a number of things, not just necessarily vaccines, but just in general, people have gotten better with actually wearing masks and sort of maintaining that social distance and sort of and that in combination with the vaccines is is helping, if you will. So I think in general people have gotten better at adhering to those basic public health guidelines in relation to preventing the spread of COVID-19.
okay. So cases are dropping. Does that mean deaths are dropping? Or are those things,
I
are they
mean
correlated?
I, I, I mean, yes, there is some correlation. Yes, the number of deaths have dropped. I still think they're quite high, but nonetheless, they are dropping. Um, but I also will say too, it's one of those things where people see numbers, the numbers are dropping, and people start to get complacent and start and stop using their best judgment and kind of start to relax on some of the things that they were doing. Keep in mind that this virus, this is still a very active virus. There's still variants of this virus that are floating around, and that people can still be infected. You, you only have roughly about a quarter, maybe a third of the total country's population at this point in time that has had a vaccine.
Hmm, okay.
Okay, so you still got a pretty sizable number of people who have not been vaccinated, and in general, it is also fair to say too that a lot of times I think people associate death because it was just any virus. When a virus infects someone, this is true of any virus. Viruses in general tend to be opportunistic. Okay, they open up the body for more infections. So if you already have something going on, let's say you're obese, you already have something going on. So, we already know the problems that are associated with obesity. So then something like the coronavirus comes along, infects an obese person. It makes what was already present in that person, it exacerbates that. It makes it much more worse. That person's pre-existing condition drives the further drives the general the seriousness of the disease, if you will. I'm trying to,
Mm.
and what I'm saying here is that the more people, when people have pre-existing conditions, or you're dealing with something like obesity, for example, when folks are infected with a disease, yes, it tends to make they're infected with something, excuse me, like coronavirus. It makes that process just that much more fatal. Okay,
Mm.
so this is why you were seeing that some of the when we were seeing some of these initial deaths, and even now, you're seeing these deaths were very much among people who already had some sort of pre-existing condition, already had something going on with them. Typically, in healthier people, yes, they stood a better chance of not having those serious adverse effects associated with the coronavirus. Now, not to
Mm.
say that not to say there aren't plenty of cases that where you had perfectly healthy people and yeah, they died from it. Yes, very true. But there are a multitude of factors associated with it. And one of the things also associated with it was that typically when you've seen medical professionals get infected with the coronavirus, many of them died for various reasons, and much of that is associated to the fact that it was hypothesized that number of them that folks who are medical professionals are being exposed to higher concentrations of the virus. So where someone might get it because you were in a proximity of somebody that had it and you were exposed to them and they were coughing or whatever the case may be, as opposed to someone that's working in an ER or an ICU, for example, and all you do is treat coronavirus patients. So you're always constantly being exposed to the virus, which means you're going to have more than likely higher concentrations of the virus within your system, which makes it so when the virus begins to multiply, it multiplies just that much faster, and there's just that much more of the virus within the person's system as opposed to someone who just may had a one-off exposure to it.
Mm. Yeah, man. It's crazy because last night I had Tawana Lawler on the show. She's a playwright and an author, and she writes movies and all this kind of stuff. And she had AIDS, but now she's undetectable.
Mm-hmm.
But when I read up on COVID and AIDS, they were basically saying that people who had HIV or AIDS didn't really have to do too much more than what normal people do, is what the literature was saying. And this was, I think, was the CDC. They said that the people who are HIV positive didn't have to do anything special as far as trying to keep from getting it just because they were HIV positive. I found that was interesting. I thought that you would have to take like some type of extra precautions, being that you're HIV positive or you have AIDS, whatever the case may be. But the literature said otherwise. So I just found that weird that it would say that. But I'm not a medical person.
Um,
What's your take on that? What's your take on that, Doc Phoenix?
I, I'm personally of the belief that someone who is immunocompromised, like an HIV/AIDS patient, cancer patients, folks with autoimmune disorders, those people are inherently immunocompromised. I wouldn't risk it.
Mm.
I if it were me, I would take extra precautions.
Mm. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. But I mean, the health website was like, they don't have to do anything. They just pretty much do what everybody else does. I just found that rather strange. But
Yeah, I personally, I, I personally would, if it were me, I would take some extra precautions. If it were,
you would think, right?
I
You
mean,
know,
yeah, naturally. I mean, again, we're talking about HIV/AIDS. This is the virus that infamously destroys your immune system.
yeah, I might have to pull that up because I just
And
found that weird.
yeah,
They
and
said,
so,
that I don't know.
actually, I did manage to listen to. I managed to listen to that some of that replay you did with the lady from last night, and
Mm-hmm.
it was an interesting story she told. Um, Now,
Yeah.
I do think she did highlight something that I thought was very important, was sort of the medications that used and how she basically stuck to the medication regimen, and it reduced her AIDS level to the point to where it's virtually undetectable. And
Mm.
and she made the comparison between her and Magic Johnson, and because I think for the longest period of time there's been sort of these urban legends out there about Magic Johnson. He was magically cured and all this stuff, and no, these medications do work. I mean, there's decades of research that have gone behind the development of these medications. So yes, they do work, and in fact, more modern day treatments for HIV/AIDS don't require that huge, massive cocktail you had to take 20, 30 years ago. And
Mm.
so now you have a few medications that can do the job of a dozen medications. And so I would say that she did do. I would give her very much props for this helping sort of kind of dispel that urban legend about Magic Johnson, because I think among Black folks that's been kind of the thing for the longest period of time. He did something. He got some special treatment, or he went to some magical place, and here's a woman that doesn't have nowhere near the resources that a Magic Johnson had, but yet for someone that was pretty advanced as her.
Yeah.
I was listening to her case. She was pretty advanced. So remember,
Yeah.
if you remember back to well, I was a kid at that time, but if you remember back when they first found out Easy E had AIDS,
Mm-hmm. I
and
remember that.
you
I'm an
remember,
old Negro. I remember all that stuff. I remember when
yeah,
Magic Johnson first came out. I think when Magic Johnson first came out with it, I was like a really young dude. I was an adult, but I was young, man. I couldn't have been no more than say 21 or
yeah.
2 or something like that.
Well,
So I remember.
When Magic Johnson first came out with and revealed that he had HIV. Remember, he at that time it was known mostly as a disease among the LGBT community.
Mm,
And when Easy came, when people discovered, was it the mid 90s, I believe, when Easy it was discovered he had it. Remember, how did Easy find out he had it? He fell out, he collapsed, and they rushed him to a hospital, and then they ran a battery of tests. Then they finally figured out, well, let's check his blood, and then come back. He has a he has a CD4 count of like 4,
mm,
you know, and what happened, for years. I mean, like if you watch the movie Straight Outta Compton, he kind of had that chronic cough for years, and just thought it was just something normal. Oh well, yeah, maybe I'm tired or whatever. Just thought it was something normal, and the entire time he had it.
mm.
And when I was listening to the lady's story from last night, sort of a similar type of thing, like, just kind of one of those things. Well, I'm kind of tired here, but it's one of these chronic. She just has chronic fatigue.
Yeah.
And you kind of got this pain that kind of come. It's kind of sort of transient. It comes and goes, and but yet it's still somewhat chronic because it's kind of there. And lo and behold, she has a seizure, and she goes to a hospital, and she finds out that way. And in those days, that's typically what happened. Now, again, for someone like her, because she was much further along in the process than Magic Johnson was. She actually had a full blown case of AIDS. From
Yes.
from what she was telling you, when they tested her, when she her CD4 count came back, it was about 4 or something like that, which was around what it was for Easy E when he discovered he had AIDS. Now, however, you know, again, this is all. Everyone is different. Everyone responds to treatment differently. Everyone's body is different, and so when she went through that cocktail of medication, she managed to suppress. Her body was able managed to fight it back and suppress the virus. And again, I think her telling that story and comparing her story to Magic Johnson is so important because I think for so many years now, there's kind of been this urban legend or sort of like this. It was this magical process that happened that cured Magic Johnson of this disease, and no, it wasn't. It really was just in his case at that time he just had the money, and by the
Yeah.
time and when she had it, yeah, those medications were quite a bit cheaper. They're still pretty expensive, but they're far more cheaper than what they were in Magic Johnson's time.
Yeah. Because I was actually joking with her about it. I said, you know that everybody think that you and Magic Johnson went off to a faraway land and got the cure. It won't tell nobody. I said that to her last night, because I know her.
Mhm.
Lady Lawler was on my show way out long. I haven't spoken to her in about 7 years, but I mean, I interviewed her back in like 2014. So I'm very familiar with her story. She's a friend of the show and all that kind of stuff. So I kind of knew what she was going to say. I just thought I would bring it to the folks, because we've forgotten about those kind of things, man. We've forgotten about our health. We've forgotten about our sexual health. Why do you think I do this Ask the Doc stuff, man? So I can have the experts up here to tell the folks something that may help them out, that may convince them to go to the doctor or get tested or whatever. That's kind of what this is for. So I just, I don't know, I'm going to keep doing it because I like doing it, and I like the people that come up here, and
No, her story was a great
I can't
story.
believe it. Yeah, it
No,
was, it was.
her story was a great story because I think her story encapsulates so much of what we've been seeing going on over the last few years with Black people and HIV/AIDS and just STIs in general.
Yeah.
And so she talked about she met this gentleman off of MySpace, and I remember MySpace back in the
Yeah.
day. I
Yeah.
remember I used to have a MySpace account many years ago. Hell, I used to have a Black Planet account many years
Yeah,
ago.
she did say MySpace.
And again, and I think this is what's happening now, where you've seen this sort of this glow, this how technology and the internet has kind of made things that would seem very distant very close.
Yes.
And people are meeting each other, and you're just kind of meeting unknown strangers on the internet. You know nothing about them. You don't know who they've been with. You don't know their history or nothing. And you meet them, and you get together, or you travel to see them, whatever the case may be. And you and this person have sex, and you never bother to really inquire about this person's history, who they've been with. Have you been tested? Just things that in this day and age, I would be very cautious about,
Yeah.
you know, and for her to say, well, she mentioned she had become celibate, but then these symptoms pops up a couple years after I guess her and this gentleman had this encounter or whatever.
Yeah.
And so again, for that's generally the progression of AIDS. When people are first infected, they don't really notice it. It doesn't You don't start to get those symptoms until that T cell count, that CD4 count starts to go down. and your body, it becomes much more difficult for your body to fight off basic infections, because that's ultimately what kills. It's not necessarily AIDS that kills people, it's the subsequent infections that your body can't fight off is what kills you. Something like the common cold will kill you. New people die from pneumonia. They die from various forms of leukemia or Kaposi sarcoma, which is a form of cancer that you usually see in AIDS patients. And so though that's something that is something that's what ultimately kills AIDS patients, is really those subsequent infections as a result of that of that the immune system that has been destroyed, and so your body has no defense. and and so yeah, so no, again, as a whole, I, when you guys were kind of talking about just sort of this, that were sort of these general infection rates of STIs and HIV/AIDS, and I want, I talked about this, oh man, maybe about a couple years ago on the Black Brain Trust. I talked about what I personally call the Southeast corridor of HIV/AIDS. So I typically start as far north as Washington, D.C., and you just go straight down that eastern seaboard. So into the Carolinas, into Georgia, and on down into Florida. That is the biggest hotspot right now for HIV/AIDS. And actually, in fact, I will even go a little further west to about Texas, and that pretty much comprises what I call that little southeast corridor. Well, southeast southwest corridor of of your hotspots for HIV/AIDS and STIs in general.
Bad down there, man. Bad,
Yes.
bad, bad. I pulled up a
So,
chart last night, man, and I was, I was showing the folks, that was before,
mhm.
Lady Lawler came on, and I was going over the states like Texas and Florida and Georgia, and yeah, man, the numbers are high. The numbers are very high, man. They're up
Well, the
there.
numbers have been consistently some of the highest numbers we've seen in the country for infections per capita have been in the Atlanta area,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of people don't even realize it's actually in Louisiana.
Mm-hmm.
So specifically that New Orleans, that New Orleans, and to a lesser extent the Baton Rouge area, but mostly New Orleans. And so you this is where you're seeing some of the biggest hotspots for new cases of HIV/AIDS infection. And one of the interesting things, and I think Black folks just kind of, we Black folks don't really think about it because you kind of really don't hear about it like that.
Mm-hmm.
But ironically enough, if you look at the newly diagnosed cases of HIV/AIDS, you're looking at Black folks consisting of almost damn near 50% of all new cases.
Mm.
So you're looking at it, depending on where you go. I think the CDC has it somewhere around like 45%, something like that. Um, but for the most part, what you're looking at Black folks, although much smaller in numbers as in general in the American population, but yet comprising a massive percentage of newly diagnosed cases of HIV/AIDS. And specifically those newly diagnosed cases of HIV/AIDS are among men who sleep with men.
Wow.
And then the next highest group within Black America would be Black women, and then it will be heterosexual Black men.
It's rough, man. It's rough out there, man. And the good doctor is in the house. Doc, you got to come up one day on the Ask the Doc show. You got to hit me up, Doc, if you're still out there, because I want to get you up on the show for one of these Ask the Docs.
Yeah. So yeah. So no. What was I saying? Yeah. So yeah. So in general, when she was telling her story pretty much correlates with the experiences that you've seen reported over the last, probably in the last decade or two.
Yeah.
So
I
so
mean,
her
she
story was almost 1-on-1 for what's pretty much been reported out there for the past almost 2 decades now.
yeah, I mean, she told a compelling story 7 years ago, and I'm familiar with it, so I figured I would bring it to the folks and let her tell her thing. She's done a lot since the last time I spoke to her. Like I said, we haven't spoke for like 7 years,
Mm.
so
No, it's a great
she's
story to tell.
she's accomplished so much.
It's a great story to tell, but it's also a very cautionary story.
Yes, that too. That
And
too.
and it's something that I want to make especially clear the folks who are listening is that just because you don't hear about HIV/AIDS or you don't really hear about STIs as much, because obviously for a number of reasons, but certainly in more recent times because we're dealing with another major virus, is that
Yeah.
this has not gone away. This is still very much a problem, and this is very much and this has been a really a sort of a silent problem in Black America for a number of years.
Yeah.
Where these things where this doesn't really get talked about.
We've forgotten about it. That's what we were talking about last night. We've forgotten about these things as if they've just went away, and but there's so much going on. There's so much going on that you know you you can't really be mad that people have forgotten about it, to be honest. I mean, because there's so much other, so many other things going on, and it's not news. You don't really hear about it. They don't really talk about it, on TV or on the internet that much, you know. So it's kind of been put on the back burner, man. It's on the back burner.
Well,
Especially
yeah.
now. Especially now.
No, go ahead, continue, please.
No, I'm just saying, especially now, it's
Mhm.
on the back burner. I mean, especially with COVID and all this kind of stuff, of course, it's freaking, who cares about HIV? It doesn't exist anymore, you know?
Well,
I told somebody I was going to do a show on, and they was like, "Oh, people are still catching that." I'm like, "Of course they are. What do you
yeah,
mean they're still catching it?"
yeah. I'm not entirely sure as to exactly why Black people think this is a problem that just kind of went away. No, this has not gone away. The numbers have been steadily rising among Black people for a number of years now, and especially Black LGBT men and Black heterosexual women.
Hmm.
And so ultimately, this is a problem that has only intensified over the last few years. Now you don't hear about it a lot for a number of reasons. I think one of it is just kind of out of sight, out of mind for a lot of folks, which I do agree with that. The other part
Yeah.
of it is that this has essentially become sort of almost a Black issue.
Hmm.
If, to be
Ex-
to be really to be really
exclusively,
I wouldn't
exclusively
say
black.
I wouldn't say exclusively, but when you're having almost 50% of all new cases comprising of Black people, that that's a pretty telling number, especially when you only have Black folks making up about 13-14% of the total U.S. population.
Yeah.
I
I
mean,
mean,
this is
what's
true. If you
causing this? Like, I mean, is it irresponsible black folks? Is it irresponsible sexual activity? Is it we screw too damn much? We screw too many people? What the hell is it? What's making what's making why is this happening? Why is it happening?
well,
Why is it happening, Doc?
I think it's also important to note that you had a number of STIs over the years that were that had effectively been, I wouldn't say eradicated, but they had virtually no infection rates.
Hmm.
So you had stuff like I think you guys talked about congenital syphilis yesterday. You guys mentioned that briefly.
Yes.
When I was in Wisconsin, we had some of the first cases a few years ago of babies born with syphilis.
Mm,
About 3-4 years ago, some of the first cases in like almost 20 years of black babies born with syphilis.
damn.
And so again, when you're looking at you're looking at a lot of these things, many of these STIs through because medications had gotten pretty effective at treating them, had essentially, removed them from really from I don't want to say remove. I'm trying to think of a good term here. Have essentially made it so where it was uncommon to sort of hear of these kinds of infections. But now, because you're seeing more antibiotic resistant strains of these STIs have been creeping up for the last few years now, they're kind of coming back sort of with a vengeance, if you will, where you're starting to see things like more antibiotic resistant gonorrhea, for example. Um, these things have started to become more common recently, and it's not just gonorrhea, it's other STIs as well. And two, I think people don't even really consider a hepatitis B or hepatitis C. People don't think of that, especially Hep B, which can be transmitted sexually.
Yeah,
Even
man.
Hep C, even though there are cures for Hep C on the market, um, but people still don't consider it, especially for older people, where hepatitis has been generally a problem in older folks for the boomers and for even some of the older Gen Xers. Because back in the day, especially for a lot of women, if you were pregnant, you gave birth, you got a blood transfusion. Blood was never checked back in those days for Hep B or for hepatitis or anything like that. So people were potentially getting infected blood and just never knew, because it was only until the late 80s that the doctors really discover hepatitis having been present in blood and having become a major issue. So, and two, because a lot of your boomers were also Vietnam vets, and so many of them were in countries where they were exposed to that hepatitis virus. So,
Wow.
but
And
go ahead, brother.
so, with all this stuff, let me ask you this, because I think this. I think a lot of us are walking around with certain things, and probably don't know it if we don't have like symptoms, or we're ignoring symptoms. I bet you it's a lot of people walking around who haven't went and got treated, haven't went and got uh, 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 any antibiotics or penicillin or amoxicillin or whatever the hell they give you. I mean, they probably don't do any of that. They don't have no symptoms, so they just going along and study screwing, and that's how stuff like that spreads. When you got people just rolling around, they ain't got no symptoms, and they
Mhm.
study screwing people raw and whatnot. So that's kind of how it spreads, right? So one of the ways it spreads, anyways.
Yeah, and no, you're correct. You do have a lot of asymptomatic transmission of various. For example, like chlamydia. In general, women are tend to be asymptomatic with chlamydia. Men tend to be symptomatic, but women aren't. And one of the long term, for example, so men asleep. Let's say two heterosexual people get together, sleep together, man, woman. Woman may have chlamydia. She gives it to the man because, he's the woman, she's asymptomatic, doesn't see anything wrong with it. He sleeps with it, he contracts it, has symptoms a few days later, and he goes to get tested. Oh, well, you have chlamydia. And for a
Mm,
lot of women, chlamydia is also one of the one of the major causes of infertility in women, because it tends to go unnoticed in women because they tend to be asymptomatic. Many women have it, and it can cause scarring and stuff like that. And so in general, I do I very much believe you are correct in saying that there is a lot of asymptomatic transmission of many of these viruses. And yes, the 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 um the the antivirals have gotten very effective over the years. But I also believe too that because simply, I mean, just be to be really frank, we live in an era where um where there is this sort of this newfound sexual freedom.
Mm-hmm.
And so people, I mean, to be really honest, people have been going out there and been exploring their options, so to say. And yes, and again, that all carries risk. I would say if you go back to what I call that southeast southwest corridor, where you kind of go straight down that you start from DC and just go straight down that Atlantic coast. Those are pretty much your hot spots for HIV/AIDS and a number of other STIs. And so again, I think it's just important to note that yeah, we might live in an age where there's this newfound sexual freedom, and people are exploring all these various forms of sexuality, if you will. It also opens the door for, you know, a lot of these STIs that yeah have been essentially been well controlled through medications to come roaring back in numbers that we haven't seen in years.
Yeah, and while all this is happening, we're still running around screwing everybody all at the same time. While all this is going on, people are just running around just screwing with no type of protection. Like, I mean, you do what you want. You're an adult, you're a grown person. Do what you want, man. But at the very least, man, protect yourself and try to protect the other person. Because if you don't know you have something, right?
Mhm.
I can't really fault you because you don't know, but that's just it. You don't know. You don't know. You don't know if this person has something, whether you're, a man or a woman. I mean, you don't know if this person has anything. Really. It's not like this written across their face, I have AIDS, I have gonorrhea. I mean, unless they humped over coughing, unless they like, unless they like that, then you might suspect something. But if they're just walking around normal, asymptomatic, I was saying last night that when you meet a girl, y'all first date should be at the clinic, getting tested, both of you. That should be y'all first date. At the clinic, making sure nobody got nothing, and then y'all proceed from there. Shoot, meet me at the clinic. That's what you freaking tell her. Yeah, man. I mean, because I was looking at the numbers last night. Like I said, Doc Phoenix, like these freaking AIDS, man, and these sexually transmitted diseases, man, are off the roof. Brother Linnell came on. As a matter, that's right. Brother Linnell came on too, and he
Mhm.
was talking about it because he went to the page and looked as well, and he was like, "Wow, man, these numbers are like off the ship." I'm like, yes, they are off the ship.
Yeah,
So I
no,
don't.
I mean,
We
if
gotta
people
we
actually
gotta clean this up, man. We definitely have to clean up.
no, if people really begin to just don't take my word for it, go go dig into these numbers for yourself. I mean, they're a lot scary. You don't hear about it as much because I think a lot, part of the reasons too is that you do got a number of new treatments that've been on the market for a few years now. You have stuff like Truvada. That's they use that's used to treat both hepatitis and HIV/AIDS. And it's one of the newer treatments. And in fact, I'm sure you probably seen some of the advertisements for it on television. And usually they have a black male and well, black males, I should say, plural, and
Hmm.
and yeah, these are some of the treatments, and so again, when you kind of look at it, you kind of see some of these things now. People are taking more, there are more effective medications that are on the market to treat many of these things. And so yes, people are still engaging in sexual activity, although they're taking medications for these, for for something like HIV/AIDS or even hepatitis B, for example. and they're taking this medication. People don't know that they have this, they have any of these conditions. And so again, this just becomes part of where each individual person has to do their own due diligence here, and really, I'm not saying become a detective and dig into every aspect of their life, but you might want to know who you might want to know something about the person you think you might end up in bed with.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Very well said. I mean, like I said, y'all first date should be at the clinic. Y'all just meet at the clinic, and just get the swab, and make sure everything is everything, and then you proceed from there. What can be better than that? This person knows this person doesn't have anything. The other person knows this person doesn't have anything. They good. They good if they do that.
I
Shoot,
mean,
that's what it needs to come down to. What if everybody was doing that? You think these numbers with these STDs would be so damn astronomical? You think AIDS numbers would be rising if they were doing that?
yeah,
'Cause
yes, I would say yes, yes. That will certainly go a long way in helping to stem the numbers we're seeing out here. Yes, I would say that definitely would help. Again, going back to what I was saying earlier about sort of this newfound sexual freedom. I mean, you think of something like OnlyFans, and yeah, I know people see it as a form of living, but as a way to make money. But when you truly think about it at its core, you know, a lot of the really sort of this, what I would consider sort of sort of reckless sexual behavior, when you think of sites like that and kind of what it promotes and what it does, um, you can obviously see why you're seeing some of these out of control numbers, especially among Black folks.
yeah,
Like I said, we live in an age where there's all of this newfound sexual freedom. Women are finding more freedom and more being more sexually liberated. And yes, that is going to come with its inherent um side effects, if you will.
yeah,
There's going to be consequences from that. You cannot have a society that is as sexually liberated, and also that is also as just as reckless and not maintaining proper sexual health.
yeah.
Uh,
And see, I don't have a problem with that. If you're an adult, do what you want. But my thing is, do what you want and protect yourself. How about that? How about that?
no, and it seems novel, but is really a common sense measure, and certainly for folks that are listening, I would certainly recommend, like, yeah, if you're not married, and yeah, even nowadays, that's I'm not gonna open up a can of worms with some of the craziness, but
Yeah, I mean, adults can do whatever they want. I would never pass judgment on how a person lives their life, or you do
yeah,
what the hell you want. You're an adult, but at least protect yourself. You know, and guess what? You protect yourself. Not only are you protecting yourself, you're protecting the other person too. It only takes it only takes one person to protect themselves, and guess what? Everybody's protected. Because if you are a man and you wear a condom, you're not just protecting yourself. If you got something, you won't give it to her, and vice versa. If you're a woman that's using, like some type of protection, whatever that protection is, especially if you're using like those the hell are those things? They like female condoms. I forgot what they call. But if you're using one of those, not only are you protecting yourself, girl, you're also protecting the dude. If you got something, he won't get it. It only takes one person to be responsible, and it helps. So how far does two people being responsible go? You understand what I'm saying?
absolutely. And I think that's, I mean, ironically enough, there were actually studies that were that there were studies, that it was in the latter part of the latter part of last year, where they were finding the COVID-19 virus in this in the semen of men.
Wow. And we had talked about that, Doc. I was
Yeah, yeah,
saying that
yeah, yeah.
it might be
We discussed
spread
it. We discussed
sexually. Yeah, we talked about this, Doc Phoenix, that it was going to be spread like an STD. We talked about it.
And so I mean, they found it in they 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 found it in feces, they found it in semen. I mean, they found it just about anywhere you can think of.
Yeah, man. I knew it. I
And
knew
and
it,
and,
Doc.
and,
I knew it.
and so again, when you kind of think about vectors of transmission,
Yeah,
and like, this is one of these areas where, people really have to be extra cautious in that. And again, going back to the woman you had on last night, I mean, her story perfectly encapsulates everything that I've seen in my life, being in healthcare, and certainly many other folks that I know. That her story perfectly encapsulates what that experience is. What is like, when you're out here, and just sort of, kind of, you really need to do your due diligence about the people, especially when you're meeting people online. I really
yeah.
stress it. I can't stress this enough. You need to be very careful about who the hell you're meeting online. You
Oh,
cannot just
yeah.
be you cannot just be meeting people online and having sex with them. And this is, I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
these are some very.
You meet somebody one time, and the first time you meet them, you go ahead and sleep with them, and you sleep with them raw. You did been never known them, never been around them. The first time you meet them, y'all get together and you sleep with them raw. Yeah, that's very brilliant. That's brilliant. That's a brilliant strategy. Yeah, this
Well,
is a brilliant strategy.
well, and again, I think it's one of these things where, you know modern technology has progressed enough, modern medical technology has progressed enough where it's kind of removed many of these STIs, and even something like HIV/AIDS from the general psyche of Black folks, where you almost think of these things as being non-existent anymore. But no, this is still very much a problem. This is very much a problem in the US. This is very much a problem in Africa still. This is very much a problem all over the world in general. But because medical technology and pharmaceuticals have advanced to the point to where, these things have been fought to the point in which it's just not detectable in everyday life. People just think these diseases have gone away, and no, they have not. And when you go back to thinking about, some of these, common STIs like syphilis, and just, how people, I mean, people should just Google syphilis and just go look at some of the long-term effects of syphilis, people who went untreated for years with syphilis, what they did to them.
Yeah.
You know,
Syphilis killed Al Capone, didn't it? Didn't
yes,
he
it did.
die from? Yeah,
Yes, he
syphilis
did.
killed him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In fact, there's a lot of studies that link syphilis to early onset Alzheimer's.
Wow.
Yeah, a lot of studies out there that link the development of Alzheimer's disease with the contraction of syphilis. Some lot of, like, if you Google it, a lot of convincing data. You know, so I mean, this is stuff that, they haven't gone anywhere. These diseases have not gone anywhere. And again, in relation, when you think about something even like COVID, COVID is not going nowhere. Yes,
No.
there's a vaccine here, but I think it should be clear to all Black folks now, COVID ain't going nowhere.
Yep. And the
Yeah, we're
doc
gonna
said
find.
most of us should get the jab. He said, Doc Phoenix said it. He said most we should get the jab, y'all. We should be
I will
getting it.
recommend. I will recommend people get it. I'm because I know Black folks get all sensitive about telling them go get a damn vaccine. but I will highly recommend it. I'm not gonna tell you should get it. I'm just gonna say I recommend it. I've gotten it myself. I didn't have any issues. You got it. It's been well over 2 weeks, you said, since you got your last shot.
Mm.
and and
So,
and and I can, again, yes, you have cases of people having adverse effects, but hey, I can show you all the women who've gone and gotten Brazilian butt lifts and how they had all these issues with it. Women who've gotten severe infections, women who got septic, women who went into acute kidney failure, and and there's a lot of stuff.
yeah, well, hopefully, folks take heed and and do the right thing, man. You don't want to. You got to be careful out there, y'all, because you don't want to catch COVID and the clap at the same time. You don't want to catch COVID and the clap at the same time, y'all. All right. So, I mean, I don't know about y'all, but I don't think that's a good combination. I don't think that's a good combination at all to have, COVID and the clap all at the same time, you know. Plus, I'm sure that would increase your medication regimen if you had COVID and the clap. God damn it! Did we lose Doc Phoenix? Doc, you still there?
Yes, I'm here.
Oh, okay, okay.
Can
I
you hear
thought
me?
I had lost you because I
Okay.
saw like like that that buffer symbol for a second.
Okay. Yeah.
Um, yeah. I mean, I don't think it's a lot to ask of black folks to say, hey, be careful. Hey, protect yourself. No one's telling you to not live your life, man. Live your damn life and do whatever the hell you want. But, and I say this again, at least protect yourself. I mean, I don't think that's a lot for us to ask from black people, to be honest. That's not a lot to ask from black people to protect your damn self out there, is it?
No, not at all. When it comes to the COVID thing, I do want to make something really clear because, again, this version of the coronavirus, again, there have been other forms of it. So we knew about the Middle East MERS, the Middle East respiratory virus from back in the mid 2000s. I think it was around like '08 or something like that. So there have been other forms of the coronavirus in actually in the past 2 decades. And so, but what made this one particularly in particular that was different was because when it first appeared, there were cases of doctors were reporting cases of patients coming into the ER with they were infected by a virus of.
I think we lost him again, y'all. I think we lost you, Doc.
Can you hear me? I don't know if it's me.
Yeah, you were out for about 10 seconds. We didn't hear any of that.
Okay. So can you hear me? Can you hear me now? I don't
Yep,
think
yep, you
so.
good. You good.
Okay. So now what I was saying was that, when you're thinking about the coronavirus, for example, there were actually cases of a mysterious virus, going back to December, even November of 2019, where doctors were reporting a mysterious virus. Patients were coming reporting to the ER with a mysterious virus with symptoms that were very similar to what we know now as being associated with COVID-19. And so again, a lot of folks actually probably may have contracted COVID-19 and just never knew they had it.
Hmm.
And again, it's a reason why this is called a novel coronavirus. Novel meaning new. It was something that had never been encountered. This particular version of it had never been encountered before, so didn't know didn't know exactly how to deal with it and how to treat it. That's why it took a number of months to come up with more effective forms of treating it or managing patients with it. But again, the thing people need to understand, and the reason why I'm bringing this up, just because you don't hear about something doesn't mean something does not exist or something has gone away. HIV/AIDS has not gone away. Coronavirus has not gone away. They're not going away until medical science is to the point where it can 100% completely eradicate those viruses. They're not going away, which means there will always be the threat of that virus. There will always be the threat of a new pandemic.
Hmm.
And again, I know Black folks are apprehensive about vaccines, and I'm recommending Black folks, you do what you do best. If you don't want to get it, don't get it. But I would not be the least bit surprised if 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 many institutions are going to recommend that for you to be here, you're gonna have to have this vaccine. If you want to go to a university, you're gonna have to have this vaccine. If you want to go to a basketball game or a football game or a baseball game, you're gonna be buying tickets, and we're gonna give you the vaccine at the same time. And we've already saw that happening.
Yeah. Get the
So even
jab
people might be
right at the
resistant to it.
stadium.
Yeah. So people might be resistant to it, but you're still getting the vaccine one way or the other. And I'm not advocating for people to be force fed a vaccine. No, I'm not advocating for that. What I'm advocating for is that Black folks be realistic here. You're 13% of the population, but Black folks are counted for about a quarter of the coronavirus deaths.
Yeah. Odd, isn't it?
You go to your major, because again, I think again a lot, there. Let's just be frank here. There's two major problems in the Black community. We have an obesity problem, and we have a problem of denial. And
I
like
agree.
when you look at folks who, for the most part, for traditionally people who have had higher morbidities associated with COVID-19, these were folks who already had some pre-existing condition. Maybe they might have had asthma, but generally the common denominator, especially for Black folks, was obesity.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a big
This
one.
this is a major problem. And Black folks have failed to recognize and failed to realize just how much of an issue obesity really is, and just how dangerous it is over the long term.
A lot
And
of
so,
us, Doc, we just can't let go of the hog mogs. We can't let go of the pig's feet. We can't let go of the chitlins. A lot of us just can't let it go, Doc. We can't let it go. We gotta have it. We gotta have a freaking pig ear. It's just the way it is. We can't get a lot of us can't get away from it, boy. We can't get away from that fried chicken. We can't get away from that damn, that cheeseburger. We can't get away from it. We can't let a lot of it go. I'm telling you, cause come on now, and I don't want this to turn into a conversation about fat people, but it probably will. Um, you know, these people don't get like this by not eating. All right. It's not like they're not eating and they go to bed and when they wake up, they've gained 35 pounds. No. Okay. These are people who are obviously have a problem with how they're eating. Number one, the quality of the shit they're eating. Number two, lack of exercise, whatever the case may be. And I'm not like a physical trainer, nothing like that, but this is just common sense. If you eat a whole bunch of garbage and you eat a lot of it and you don't do shit, you're going to be fat. I mean, 2 + 2 is 4, as freaking RBR says, right? So if you eat a bunch of garbage, you eat a bunch of it all the time, and you're just sitting on your ass, how can you not become fat from that? How would you not become fat? So you see all these obese people, and what kills me is when I travel, because I travel, up and down the East Coast. I don't do a lot of traveling westward, but I do a lot of traveling up and down the East Coast. I've been from Florida right on up to like Connecticut and every damn where in between I be, throughout the year. And whenever I go and I talk to my people or my relatives or people that I know in these different places, they always talk about something called food deserts, right? Now, they're always talking about these food deserts that are in their neighborhoods and on their blocks, but I see a lot of damn fat people walking around there. So it's like, how is this a food desert? But I see all these fat people. They must be eating a lot of the food that don't exist here. Because you would think if it's a food desert, the people would be thin around there, not fat, because there's nothing to eat unless you're just eating a lot of the so-called garbage that's in the food desert. Freaking Obsidian was on, and he said some shit really funny when he was on here. Brother Obsidian said, yeah, he said if it's a food desert, but everybody's fat, he said that's the equivalent of a man being on a real desert, but he's pissing all the time. That's what Brother Obsidian said. He said that's the equivalent of a person being on a real desert, but he's always pissing because he's got he's drinking a lot of water, but he's in the desert, so he's always pissing. I just thought that was funny. But yeah, so these are people who are not engaging. All right. These people are not engaging. And I'm not going to say all of them, but you can't tell me that some of these people who are big as hell, you can't tell me that a lot of them are not just straight up living unhealthy lifestyles, man. I mean, come on now. I mean, I sat in here a couple times in the house because my little studio setup is like, it's like in a corner, like in me and my wife's bedroom. And sometimes I sit here with her and she's watching something called My 600-Pound Life. And I'm like, how on earth does a person get to be 600 pounds, 700 pounds, 800 pounds? I couldn't imagine, Doc. I just couldn't imagine. And a lot of these people talk about food deserts. If you're in a food desert, how the hell you weigh 750 pounds? That's just weird to me. Like, I don't know. It's just the weirdest thing. And now we got this disease that will come through and target you and kill you. And you still don't want to say, okay, let me not be like this anymore so I can increase my chances of living. I don't understand that. I just.
Well, it's one thing I do want to add to those two bullet points I made with the two problems. I want to add a third problem. It's portion control.
Mm.
So if you look at My 600-Pound Life, I watched a few episodes of it. If I had aspirations of being a bariatric surgeon, I would probably make a lot of damn money. Because trust me, the guy that does that, he makes a lot of damn money.
I'm sure.
Those are basically extremely high risk patients. If you watch that, they have to sign consent forms because basically they're consenting to the fact that if I undergo this surgery and
He faded out again. I think we lost you again, Doc.
can you hear me?
We lost you for about 5 seconds there.
Can you hear me? Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
I don't know what's going on with that. Yeah.
We can hear you now.
Okay. Yeah. And so I think if you what was the last part you hear?
You were saying that you said that the guy, the geriatric surgeon, he makes a lot of money.
The bariatric surgeon. Yes. Yeah, he makes a lot of money doing that, but also understand he's dealing with an extremely high risk population. These folks
Yeah.
have a high probability of dying during surgery, and so they have to sign consent forms, let him know that he's not responsible if they die during surgery. Because again, can you imagine? That's part of the reason when you watch the show, he's trying to get them to lose quite a bit of weight before they even undergo the surgery to try to reduce the amount of stress that the body would be under. And part of it too, because you're just not going to find an anesthesiologist that be willing to touch these.
Lost him again. Lost him again. He might be in a bad area, y'all. I don't know. He might just be in a bad area or something, because this time he went all the way off. But we're going to do this, y'all. Oh, okay, he's back. Yeah, we lost you there, Doc, for a minute.
Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you now.
Okay, sorry about that. No, what I was saying is that essentially he deals with an extremely high risk population that these folks face a high probability of dying during surgery because
Hmm.
again they're these people are morbidly obese, and so that comes with a very special set of risk factors that it, it's highly unlikely you can mitigate every single risk factor that's involved when you're dealing with a high risk population like that. And so, what's important to know that if you notice when these people come under his care, he has them go on these diets so they can try to lose as much weight as possible before they undergo the surgery. Why? Because it is so difficult trying to cut. Can you imagine having to cut through all those layers of skin and fat to
Uh,
to get to the app to get to
These, and not to make fun of them, but to make fun of them. I mean, it's just crazy. It's crazy when she's right here is one of the smaller one of them. This chick right here, because you look at somebody like this, like, man, that doesn't even look like a real person.
yeah.
That doesn't even look like a real person. That looks like some shit in a movie, like, some super villain, like sitting in a cave or they den, and they're like this super villain with like all this power, but
Mhm.
they're this,
Mhm.
you
But
know.
no, no,
Uh,
no. You bring up a good point. B. Actually, there's something else I want to bring up, and someone had mentioned it in the chat. But I wanted to say that if you look at all these cases, they all have one thing in common. They usually have an enabler. So
yeah.
no, so they have somebody that enables the behavior, that enables the overeating, that doesn't push them to lose weight,
Hmm.
and,
I
and
know.
so And so again, so you have people who eat these massive size portions, and you couple that with an enabler that enables the behavior, enables the maladaptive behavior. So you get these folks who essentially eat themselves to death. And there have been a
Yeah.
number of folks on his program who never, even after they had the surgery, they died. They died.
Yeah. I mean,
So, so I
this.
mean, it's not foolproof at all because again, when you imagine you spend, you know, pretty much for many of these folks, they spend most of their lives like this.
Yeah.
These folks didn't just wake up one day and they were 600 or 800 pounds. No, this happened over a course of decades. And so, yeah, there have been a number of folks who were on this program, even after they had the surgery, they still died. There were folks that there were folks that were successful in it, but again, this is still a very high risk population, and as it concerns Black folks, I think not to make fun, I'm not trying to make fun of anyone, but I think this layer of denial when I've seen some of the Black patients he had, and this is the women. I hate to say this, but they go to the religious thing, and religion is not going to save you if you're 800 pounds.
Hell no. Hell
And
no, it's not.
this is not God's plan. I don't think He intended for you to be this way, because this is just not a natural state of being.
No. It took work to get this way, Doc. It
Yes, it
took
does.
work.
Yes, it
It
does.
took effort. This didn't just happen. Work was put into this. Years, hours, work went into this. Real direct effort went into this. You don't end up just like this. I mean, by doing nothing to help it along. Like
Well,
you just don't.
and speaking of obesity, and and particularly obesity in Black women, we know is, in my opinion, is the major problem.
Yep.
It's it's the most pressing issue Black women are dealing with right now. And I think there's a level of denial that just doesn't do Black women any service. I mean, I look, I don't want to. I'll be honest about this. I have a problem when you have major companies that are promoting women who are borderline morbidly obese as part of a body positivity campaign. There's no body positivity when you can't find not a single medical professional alive in this country that would say that is a natural state of health. That is a positive state of health. That is a positive state of being.
You're co-signing the unhealthiness. If
Yes,
you're if you're promoting, people who are overweight and all this, you're saying it's okay to be that way, and that's not true.
yes. And I think any medical professional, doctor, nurse practitioner, whatever, pharmacist, whatever, that will sit there and okay this, I have a serious problem with them,
Yeah.
because this is wholly unnatural. This is not what people. It should not be the case where you have women that are 5'10", 5'11", 300 plus pounds, and you're considered a mark of you're considered the standard bearer for body positivity. No, body positivity should be she's 5'10", she's 5'11", and she's 135 pounds, she's 140 pounds. That
Yeah.
should be body positivity, not a
Well,
woman that weighs more than twice that amount.
yeah, I mean, some of these chicks on here, they've actually lost some weight. They've lost, like right here. She lost 470 pounds. She lost like three people.
Yeah,
She
yeah,
lost like three folks. She lost like three
and
folks.
we've seen this problem for years now, where that average weight of and I want to say this is this is almost exclusively a Black female problem. Now there's a percentage of Black men that are overweight, but it's almost double that it's practically double that of Black women.
Oh yeah, I think everybody's pretty much conceded that at this point, even if they don't like it. I
Yeah,
think I think it's been force fed down everybody's throat, so everybody knows that now.
yeah,
The new thing now is, oh, we're built different, or oh, it's all right to be a little fat and chunky. That's just black people. That's the new thing now.
no, no,
That's just black
and
people.
if it's not acceptable for men, it definitely shouldn't be acceptable for women, especially given the fact that women have to carry babies, or they will
Yes.
carry a child, a baby at some point in their life. And again, when you're overweight, and you're automatically thrown into the high risk pregnancy if you're overweight and you're pregnant and you become pregnant. You automatically
How
thrown
the hell?
into.
How the hell you become pregnant when you look like this? How does that even happen? unless you're
You got, well, well, I do want to say this because I think I think, for folks to understand this, and certainly for Black women to understand this, when you become overweight, that actually throws your hormone balance out of whack. Like it's just not normal. Your hormones just are not normal when you're overweight, and so you become prone to other. You become more prone to other issues. You can have a lot of you're more prone to not having an abnormal menses, meaning you have an abnormal period. You can have a even if you were to get pregnant, it will most likely it could potentially end in an miscarriage. Even
well,
if
I
you
don't. Well,
even if
I
you
don't
carry a
think.
child to term, you're more likely to develop something called preeclampsia or eclampsia.
Mm,
You will develop gestational diabetes.
yeah,
Um,
that's a given.
yeah,
That's a given. But
so
this is the thing.
yes.
Looking at this chick here to the right of the screen, she's not gonna have to worry about getting pregnant. I mean, what? How? I don't even think it's physically possible for her to get pregnant at this point. So that's like the least of her worries. Like, I mean, yeah,
No,
right.
people. I mean, look. Look. I'm. Look. For these cases,
Oh, you think she can get pregnant, Doc? This one right here,
she can get
Doc.
pregnant. I mean, if
There's
she can
no
get,
way.
it
Yeah,
is
maybe if
possible.
they use a turkey baster, and that motherfucker better be a long ass turkey baster at that to get past all this.
You gonna give me?
Shit, that
Oh,
shit better be that turkey baster better be commercial. It better not be no residential turkey baster. It needs to be a commercial turkey baster.
well, I would say this: if you,
My
like I
bad.
said,
Go ahead, Doc.
if you watch some of those episodes, many of the women that were on that they hate children.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, and in
That's
fact,
because
the children were helping to take care of them in many of these episodes.
yeah,
So it
but
was.
so they had the not well, I'm trying to think because I'm telling you, I still watch it with my wife. I haven't watched it. I don't even think
Mhm.
she watches it anymore. And I'm trying to think if they had kids on there or not. I'm trying to remember. Because I've always said this. I say this with when I'm watching it with her. Like how the hell would they possibly get pregnant when they look like her up here? Shit is crazy. How the hell they getting pregnant? How the hell you get pregnant when you look like this? Let me find a good one. How do
Well,
you how do you get pregnant when you look like that? How?
I
How on earth? How do you do it?
well I
Unless you use a commercial turkey baster. Commercial grade. It's just funny to me. Like, I don't know what the hell these dudes are thinking about, boy. If you climbing on that, man, to
well,
each his own. I feel for you, brother.
I do want no I do want to say this because again this really isn't a laughing matter, especially as it pertains to black women and
No,
obesity. Again, we know that
no,
black
no,
we
it's not.
know
I'm just
yeah
making light of it, Doc. You know
no
me,
no no
but I know it. I
no
know
I
it's
understand.
serious.
No, I
It's
understand,
serious.
but I understand, but no, what I'm saying is that because I think a lot of times when people, black folks have been in denial for so long about obesity and such. I mean, it is it has allowed these obesity the obesity rates among black women to just get out of control now to the point
Yes.
to the tune where we're looking at roughly about 80% of black women are overweight and about
Yep.
the 60% of them are obese, and so yeah, but I guess you got a question here. Oh,
Um. Yeah, but go ahead. Finish your thought. We'll read it. Go ahead. Finish your thought.
well, actually, because the question actually goes into what I was gonna get into anyway. So
Okay.
if you want to go ahead and read it.
Oh, absolutely. Shout out Renaissance Man.
Yeah, how you doing, Renaissance Man?
For the $5 super chat. Appreciate that, brother. He said, "What's up, Dr. Phoenix? What are your thoughts on the BMI? A lot of black women say that it's Eurocentric and should not apply to black people. Any truth to this?"
No. The short answer is no.
Hmm.
Here's the thing about BMI. The BMI exists for a reason. And I think this goes back to what I said well, I initially said 2, but then I amended it to 3. The 3 problems that black folks, and this is more specific to black women face, is 1, obesity, 2, denial, 3, portion control. If you ever gone out, if you know you and your wife go out, X, and you guys ever go to a restaurant and you see you don't see typically a lot of black couples out like that these days. Is usually a group of black women together, and you go out and to be real frank, and you look at them. Do you see what's on their plate?
Yeah.
And the reason the BMI exists because the BMI is designed to tell you what is the appropriate weight for your height. No, the weight is the weight. A 5'10" white woman is the same as a 5'10" black woman. Okay. Her body isn't any less put together than a black woman's. Okay.
But what they're gonna say, Dr. Phoenix, is that's the white man's data.
Well, I think that data, I think that only gets said when you can't disprove something that's a fact. Because the numbers are the numbers. And if you don't believe the numbers, then just go look at the amount of adverse events that happen when black women are pregnant. The number of black women who have complicated pregnancies because they're overweight. Remember what I said a few minutes ago about being a woman being overweight is automatically put into the category of high risk pregnancy. Why? Because there are just so many risk factors that are associated with being overweight. And the more overweight you are, the higher those risk factors. And so, again, I to Renaissance Man's question, no, there's nothing Eurocentric about it. Again, what would it look like a 5'1" female weighing 200 pounds? What does that even look like? Because if you really want to get to the heart of what the problem is that they're saying, well, a woman that's 5'4" is okay for her to be 200 pounds. And if you think about that, what does a 5'4", 200-pound woman look like? What is her dress size? You're looking at a woman who's roughly about a size 16 to an 18.
Well, you would think, because from what I understand, according to a study that I read back in 2017, I believe, or 2018, that black mothers, they're dying in childbirth at like, I don't know, I think it was like 3 times the rate or something like that. I'm trying to remember. I can't remember
it's about they were 3 times more likely to die during childbirth than their white counterparts.
Yes. So that alone should scare the shit out of them to, do what's right. If they're gonna want to, they want to have babies and stuff like that. Because I remember that stat from back then. I believe I did talked about it on a stream or something, but I remember reading a study that they are more likely to die in childbirth.
I also want to put a little bit of clarity on that too, because while that can certainly the overall health of the woman can be factored into that, I also want to say something too, because truth be told, because I've known people who have gone through these. I've personally known folks who have had who have had complicated pregnancies, and I do want to say this. many times it is also a lack of the provider not catching these things,
Mm,
not noticing, a woman who may, who has an elevated blood pressure, who is you've seen her twice in the last 2 months, and she's had an elevated blood pressure both times, or she's having some other things going on. I, that's something that I honestly feel a lot of that cannot just go necessarily on the women themselves, but also
mm,
on the person providing medical services, who providing prenatal services for these women. Um, and so yes, so if doctors are not catching this, I think that's also a problem too. It's not just necessarily these women are not healthy to begin with, but it's also a problem of, yeah, these doctors are not catching this. And I think a good example of that would be Beyonce and even Serena Williams. Now, I'm not the biggest fan of Serena Williams, but I would say this much: she almost died during childbirth because the doctors ignored her pleas.
mm,
It was basically, by the time they discovered she had multiple blood clots and pulmonary embolisms, that had they been any later in discovering it, she probably would have died. And you saw something, and in the case of Beyonce, she actually developed preeclampsia while she was pregnant with her twins. Which,
mm,
if you don't know, that's a condition that kills many women, and for women who often survive it, many of them oftentimes at the point of which they develop it, they begin to experience multi-system organ failure. And so again, and then many women have long-term lasting effects of these, especially preeclampsia, that progresses to full-blown eclampsia. They have long-term effects even years after they've given birth. And so, for someone like her, like Beyonce, who went through that experience, again, this is one of these things that here are two wealthy women who have all the resources in the world to have a perfectly viable and healthy pregnancy, but yet, and they themselves were healthy, but yet, you have doctors that are not catching some very basic stuff here. And I think
mm.
a lot of that goes to the fact that, to be real frank here, and to be real frank, a lot of it just kind of goes to the fact that, yeah, oftentimes, black folks are not given the standard of care. Now, to go back to Renaissance Man's initial question about the BMI says everything. I mean, even if a black man doesn't even know what a BMI is, or black men certainly understand when I'm looking at a woman that's 5'5" and she's 230 pounds. They understand, well, that don't really look right. That doesn't really look healthy. You don't need to be an expert to understand, well, this doesn't quite look right.
Yeah.
You just kind of only need really that anecdotal evidence to say, well, uh, is this not necessarily if it's just not if it's just visually appealing, but more or less, does this even look healthy in your eye? If you go out and a woman eats more than you.
Yeah. Isn't that crazy?
I mean, I don't even eat. I don't even
Yeah.
eat, and I could imagine ever being with someone who ate significantly more than I did. I couldn't even
Hell
imagine.
yeah. Shit, I've been married to my woman 20 years, man. And you think we sit there and I will watch her eat more food than I eat, and I'm way bigger than her? Like, what do you? I would be like, damn, what? What's going on? Is there a food crisis or something? Is she eating more than I eat?
Yeah,
A fully grown man. A fully grown 6'2" man and a woman can eat more than you. That's insanity. It's insanity, man. And any man that stands for it is crazy.
yeah. No, and uh I think Renaissance Man wanted to say something.
Yeah. I sent it to
Yeah.
him. I sent it to
Um,
him.
yeah, I just wanted to say that, yeah, for the most part, when it comes to the whole BMI thing, we can say till we're blue in the face, it's Eurocentric. Look, here's the problem. This goes
That's the
back to
white man's data.
look. Here's the problem, man. It's true, and this is just denial. And denial is something that has been killing Black people for a long damn time. Black people were in denial about HIV/AIDS, and we saw what it did. We saw
Yep.
what it did in Black America now for decades,
Yep.
and it hasn't
Hasn't
gone away.
hasn't went anywhere. It hasn't. We've just stopped thinking about it and talking about it. It hasn't went anywhere.
Black people,
It's just made its way to the back of our minds.
Black folks have been in denial about COVID.
Yep.
You see that. If you don't take my word for it, just go look up the data. The data's pretty damn clear. We can say it's the white man stuff all the time, but where do you think the CDC gets this data from? They're getting it directly from hospitals and states. The hospitals are
Yep.
reporting it to the state. The states are sending the data to the CDC. That's how it works.
Well, I know it's real, man. It's affected me. You know,
What's up, panel?
How
brother
you doing?
Renaissance. What's
How you
good with
doing?
it, man?
Nothing much. What's up, X? What's up, Dr. Phoenix?
How you doing?
What you
I'm
got for
good.
us, man?
Now, I want to elaborate. Thanks for letting me come up. I want to elaborate a little bit more on my super chat.
Okay.
Yeah, what I no, you answered the question, and I guess the only thing I nuance I'd add is I've heard people make that argument for when there is an extreme, like obviously, like you said, some things don't look right. There are still people who will say that that black people are built differently and they carry their black women specifically carry
No,
their weight differently, and that ties into the BMI not being as accurate. I don't know if you've heard that or if there's any
no,
like.
no. I mean, that's a variation of the big bone argument.
Okay, yeah, because
That that
that's the thing I'll hear is they're like, well, black men like thicker women. Black women are naturally thicker, so they're gonna carry their weight in different areas, and it's gonna weigh more. And I don't have a science background, so I'm like, okay, maybe there is some truth to that.
no. There is some minute evidence that support that black women might have slightly denser bones than white women, slightly denser. But it doesn't mean that black women don't still deal with osteoporosis as they
Yeah.
age.
And the other thing I thought about too, when people made that argument, I'm like, if you go and look at, what a lot of black women looked like, say in the 60s and 70s, you saw a lot of that same, what we would consider more of a white female body type, if you look back at pictures.
You don't even have to go to the 70s. I can think back to when the 90s, when I was a kid and used to get the Jet magazines and they had the Jet Beauty of the Week. And you just had these very nice looking women. I mean, when you think about some of those movies from, back in the day, some of the old black films, you think about like something like Boomerang from back in the day, whatever. You think about how the black women looked in those movies, in that movie like that. That you didn't see women that were 5'6" and 220 pounds. You saw black women that were 5'4", 5'5", 130 pounds, 135. You didn't see that. You don't have to go back 50 or 60 years to see that. You could have went back. Most of us can go back to a time when we were young, when we were kids, and you picked up one of those magazines and you saw some very nice looking women. They weren't these super curvy women, but they were very nicely shaped. They were very
Hmm.
proportionate. It wasn't this women are getting BBLs or they're getting silicone injections these days. No, it wasn't none of that. It was just very women who were just naturally in shape, and they and it didn't and it does and there's no such thing as quote carrying your weight differently. There's no such thing. If that was the case, then your bone structure would be different.
Yeah, yeah. The other thing I was going to say, the sad part is because I did take a Coursera course on like health and nutrition just to
Mm-hmm.
for more knowledge for myself. They were talking about essentially what happens at a certain point. Your body has a new set point, and
Yes.
that basically once you gain so much weight, your body adjusts to that being your natural weight. And what will happen is they were essentially saying because the humans did not evolve in an environment where food was readily available, food was scarce. Once you drop below that set point, your body will actually release hormones to make you hungry, to activate your appetite.
Mm-hmm.
It'll try to slow down its metabolism to try to retain weight. So essentially, once you get to a point where you're consistently overweight and obese for an extended period of time, it just gets harder and harder to reset that set point. And what they really said is the only way you can really do it is you can try to speed your metabolism up by exercising, and then you've just got to be disciplined enough to basically, like you were saying earlier, portion controls and meal plans. That's really the only way you can get it under control at that point. Because
Yeah.
unfortunately, a lot of us were not raised with you know, here's what you need to eat, here's what you need to fill up on. You don't eat till you feel full, portions, all of that. And then when a lot of us find out, unfortunately, it's a lifetime of eating unhealthily.
Yeah, and you make a great point, Renaissance man. The longer you're obese, the more difficult it becomes to lose weight. That's why you have shows like My 600 Pound Life. And two, because we live in an era where people can just go get tummy tucks and lap band and go see a bariatric surgeon, people have just gotten flat out lazy. There's no
Yeah,
real effort that gets put into weight loss, like actively. Because again, most people who go get tummy tucks will have they go gain the weight right back anyway. You just spent 10, 15, 20 grand to go get a tummy tuck and all lipo and all that, and you're just gonna gain the weight right back. The
yeah,
women are
because
probably gonna end up pregnant, or they just go they don't bother to change their lifestyles to match the
exactly.
weight loss that occurred. So what you gonna do? You just go back to eating the same stuff you were eating before you got the surgery.
Yeah, and on top of that too, just in general, the American lifestyle is not, because so much of our lifestyle was not developed around living a healthy lifestyle. Like when you look at the size of, say, the average European and even a healthy American, I mean, they're just a lot smaller because their lifestyle is built where, they walk a lot of places. They don't drive everywhere. They don't have, suburbs where they got to drive, 30 minutes, you
Mm-hmm.
know, outside of the city to get home every day. They can walk to work. They can do, and granted, you live an urban lifestyle, you can live like that. Some of these western cities are a lot more bike friendly, so you can get around that way. But a lot of places aren't, and that contributes to it.
No, you're absolutely correct, Renaissance man. You know, you know, living in a big city is a catch-22. One for one, the great thing about it is that everything is closely is everything is just kind of close by. Everything is close together. On the other hand, it also makes people very lazy
I think we
because
make I think we make too many damn excuses for obesity and
no,
being
I
overweight.
do think we
I
live in
think
a country, and I've been, I'll put it this way. I think very much companies are wholly you have corporations now that are they've been cashing in on this body positivity movement, and look, I think that's just so dangerous, period. you know what are you saying when you're telling women it is okay to be 5'11" and 300 plus pounds? You weigh three times you weigh twice as much as I do.
yeah.
You offensive lineman in the NFL without the height,
I mean,
damn
I
it.
mean, yes, you can certainly be a defensive lineman, whatever. I mean, at that weight, yes. I mean, you're weighing as much as an NFL player, but those men have a reason to be that big. You know,
Yeah.
they have a reason too. They also exercise and
Exactly.
lift weights and do all that stuff every single
Yeah.
day.
They're
You're that
mostly
woman.
muscle. They're
Yeah,
mostly muscle. If a woman is that weight, she's mostly fat.
yeah. And I think, that comes down to that denial part.
And,
Whenever you're looking at, whenever you're thinking of a person who has an addiction. So pick your poison. Gambling addiction, drug addiction, whatever. The number one problem always is denial. People always, every person that has an addiction is denial. Yes, we can say people are addicted to food. Yes, that is very true. People are also very highly undisciplined and not very much in control of their lives as they once were. It wasn't that long ago where, you know, things that, in the 90s and even in the early 2000s, because we really didn't see this stuff until the mid 2000s, but the early 2000s on into the 90s and the 80s and 70s and 60s, you've seen people have more active lifestyles. And certainly when I was growing up in Chicago, you know I rode my bike all the time. I was active. Everybody, I didn't really see obese people like that when I was in high school. You
yeah,
know,
yeah,
it's just now over the last 15 or so years where you really, that this obesity has just really come into these really stark terms where it's just everywhere. It's in our life. You can go on Instagram and you can see folks who are happily praising obese black women.
look
And
at the
don't do these folks
celebration.
any. Go
Look,
ahead,
look
bro.
at the celebration of Lizzo.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm just like, if people don't see what's being done, why a woman like that is being propped up. If people can't see, okay, like this woman is not being celebrated because it's something positive. It's kind of mocking and it's promoting something negative. I mean, to me, that should have been the obvious thing. I mean, just the things that they give her a pass for doing in public that you know no other respecting woman would ever be, caught doing. You know what I mean?
yeah. I, and I think that goes to the major problem we see with black people. You know, to X's to the statement X made earlier about people just being just disciplined, and we're not as hard as we should be as a society on obesity. Yeah, this is a major problem.
Mm.
And for women, I don't know if women really thought about it, but your health expenses go up as you get older.
Yeah.
And it's a lot easier to mitigate health. It's a lot easier to mitigate those expenses by if you were healthier to begin with. Yes, people get older, they get sick. Yeah, we know that. And certainly with women, that's definitely true because for the most part, women, the reason, if you look at stats, so for example, cardiovascular disease in black women, you know, I, there was an interview I heard a few years ago. I think it was on a Breakfast Club where women came on and said domestic violence was the number one cause of death for black women. That's totally a lie.
Yeah,
That's
Wow.
totally a lie.
insane.
The number one cause of death for black women is cardiovascular disease. And when does that go up? In their 50s. Why? Because they're postmenopausal. So they lose those protective benefits of estrogen.
Oh,
Estrogen
Mm.
protects them against high cholesterol, typically high blood pressure. But again, if you're already overweight and then you're going into menopause, yeah,
I
you
was
can see
gonna.
where
Yeah,
that becomes a major problem, where those
it's
numbers be
it's
even though those risk factors skyrocket even more.
it's my understanding that more people die from obesity related causes and diseases and conditions than drinking and smoking combined every year. Is that true?
Yes, because believe it or not, this country's actually been pretty effective at getting people to stop smoking cigarettes. Now, if only
Mm.
Yeah.
they took Now, if only if they took those same public health campaigns against obesity, but they won't because why? Because this is such a sensitive issue, especially for Black women, Black people in general, but Black women specific.
Yeah, I was going to add, I was actually listening. I can't remember what I was listening to. It was the other day, but they were saying the main causes of of diseases were stress and lack of preventative care. That if people were basically engaged in a lot in the preventative care, especially when they get into their late 30s and 40s, going and see a doctor regularly, and then as well as making sure that their body is not under continued stress, or and their lifestyle is not under continued stress. As well as they talked about things like loneliness as well. They were like, that was, oh, they were talking about blue zones. That was the main thing. They were talking about blue zones where people live to be 100. And they were talking
Mhm.
about those are some of the major factors that, in these places, they emphasize things like social bonds, people eating healthy. The lifestyle is very much where people are up and moving around. So that's why you're seeing all these people living to 100. And they were
Yeah,
just pointing out some basic things that people could do. And the guy was actually saying that he was actually trying to take some proposals to some of these cities to try to get some of this, basically influenced into, urban and community planning, where you can lay things out where you're seeing, where they're building more places where people can work and have mixed use development. So you can work, shop, and live in a
in the same
relatively
area.
small area.
Yeah.
But it goes back to what you're saying. People have to make the conscious choice if they're in that lifestyle to actually walk and make that work instead of being using it as an excuse to be lazy.
No,
Yeah.
no, and that's very true. And again, the public health campaigns to stop people from smoking, because remember, for decades, you know, it wasn't that long ago. Certainly in X's parents' time, where everyone smoked cigarettes. Everyone.
Yeah. Everybody.
Oh yeah, if I talk to older coworkers, they'll tell me days like these people probably in their mid to late 50s. They'll tell you days where people could smoke inside the office, and like you'd have pregnant women and people would just literally
Yeah.
blow smoke out in the air.
Well, yeah,
Hmm.
because for the longest time, and yes, the AMA, the American Medical Association, was guilty of this. We're telling people it was okay to smoke. So if you go back to the 40s, 50s, and 60s, people were told, specifically the 50s, people were told it was smoke. So if you see some of these shows where they were in the 50s, what do? You always saw the women smoking. They had one of
Hmm.
those little filters that they smoked through or whatever. Uh, but for the longest time, smoking was considered not hazardous to your health until all this data started coming out too, because a lot of folks that were promoting it, they ultimately died from lung cancer, believe it or not. Um, but what happened was that, yeah, when there became a massive public health campaign to stop to reduce the amount of Americans that smoke cigarettes, it was actually quite effective. Why? Because you saw it on your TV. There were all these, they started taxing the hell out of cigarettes and stuff. You go to
Hmm.
places like Chicago, a pack of cigarettes is like $20.
Yeah.
It used to be when I was a kid, a pack of cigarettes was like $3 or $4.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so and I remember growing up, my uncle, he was a heavy smoker. He used to smoke those old school cigarettes, not Newports, Benson and Hedges. Those,
Mm.
those were the
Benson
old
and the Hedges.
those were the old school.
And you
Yeah.
see they're pushing to make menthols illegal now.
Well, yeah,
Every
because go
everybody
ahead.
smoked. Everybody smoked back then, though. Like, cause I
Yeah,
remember my older brothers and sisters who are, they've got me by a few years. They smoked. Everybody. I think my mom smoked back then. So everybody around you was always smoking. And they smoked inside, like you said, inside.
yeah,
People, now you go anywhere, you're not going to see anybody smoking inside unless it's like a cigar lounge.
well,
Anywhere
yeah,
else, people aren't smoking inside.
and that was part of that public health campaign to ban smoking indoors.
Mm,
And it was that big public health campaign, and also a push from the ground, from the ground. People themselves were pushing to ban indoor smoking
Yeah, I
because
remember that.
because
I
this was a
remember we.
major problem. This was a major problem in housing projects where you had a lot of kids that were developing asthma, not just because they were exposed to a combination of cigarette smoke, plus they were exposed to roaches.
Mm.
Uh-huh. And so this is why you've seen so many black kids develop reactive airway diseases like bronchitis and asthma.
Yeah, I'm sure
Yeah.
you all are old enough to remember when you went out to a restaurant and they'd ask you, "Do you want to sit in the smoking or non-smoking section?"
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And now you don't even get that because again, that public health campaign was effective at putting smoking in the starkest of contrast to your health. And
Yeah.
now here we are in the 21st century in the year 2021, and we're saying it's okay for people to be 5'11", 300 plus pounds. It's okay for a woman to be 5'11", 300 plus pounds. So you got the average weight of a black woman being about 200 pounds.
Oh wow, I did not know that. I mean, wow. I mean, when you think about it, yeah, but I mean, that's crazy, and especially when you put it in the context of, in general, women are much shorter than men.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, you don't need to be a medical professional, but if you go outside your house every day and you just look around and just anecdotally speaking, you see like, yeah, this doesn't look right. This woman is about 5'4" and she's 220 pounds. That doesn't look cool. There's no way you can quote carry that body weight properly or differently. There's just no way you can do that.
Yeah, man.
And
I remember I was in a supermarket one time and I went to the counter and it was this lady behind me, man, and she was like, she must have been, I don't know, she must have been like 5'2", 5'3", and she easily weighed in at about 230, 240. And I mean, she was breathing back there so hard, it was
yeah,
almost like she was snoring, you
yeah,
know?
and
I'm like,
that goes to your BMI right there. So to the earlier question Renaissance Man had about the BMI, part of the reason why the BMI is used is because it's also used to gauge. So for example, X was just talking about the woman, she has this very
yeah,
breathing
like,
pattern. Yeah, yeah. Almost,
it was like
almost
that, like loud in the supermarket.
yeah, like
Damn.
she's sucking air through a tunnel or something.
Yeah, man.
And again, if people pay attention when you just kind of observe sort of the general breathing patterns of folks who are overweight, especially those who are obese, you can hear the breathing, you can hear them sucking in the air every time, every word that they speak, you can hear the breathing in between a word.
Yeah,
Why? Because the
yeah.
body has to exert that much more effort to get air to the lungs. Your
Yeah,
body has to work that
Crazy,
much
man.
harder. And two, once you get to around 35 for BMI, you're considered obese. Um, and once you get to around to that 35, typically you start to look at issues like sleep apnea.
yeah,
Yeah,
that's what I was going to ask you. If that,
yeah,
I'm
Yeah,
figured that's correlated with weight.
yeah,
For those
yeah,
people who don't,
yeah.
yeah,
And oftentimes you see people with, and if you ever seen any older folks who had sleep apnea, what do? They sleep with something called a CPAP.
yep,
They have one
yeah.
of those. They have one of those
You have to
machines.
put
They
a
put it on their
mask
face.
on with the
Yeah.
tube and all of that.
Uh-huh. And that's something that commonly occurs as you gain weight. Why? Because all that weight, especially around your thoracic area, your chest, your neck area. What happens that it makes it much more difficult for air to get into your trachea and down into your lungs, and so that expansion of the chest that has to occur to get air, because air is a process of negative moving air in and out of the lungs is a process through negative space, meaning that the lungs respond to when there's negative space, meaning a lack of air
Mm,
in the lungs. And so what happens is that when that process just occurs naturally for those of for people that are normal weight, you don't. I mean, people in general, you don't really pay attention to it until you're around someone who's obese, and you can clearly see that process happening.
Mm.
So every time you hear that,
Yeah,
they're
that's
almost
snoring.
snoring
And
like
it
sound.
woke snoring.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That is a telltale sign of someone being overweight, because you won't see this in people who are healthy weight. You only see this in people who are overweight. Like even
Well,
like X was saying, you look at My 600 Pound Life. If you listen to them, you can hear it in those. You can hear it in those people too if you listen.
yeah. It's like the grizzly bear, the woke snoring. Um, it does it have to do with where it is? Because I've seen people now. I've seen especially women, because women come in all different kinds of obese sizes. So I've seen women who they're really really big at the bottom, but small at the top, and likewise you see they're really, really big at the top, but they're small at the bottom. So if you're bigger, is it because the weight is at the top? Do people who have more of it, like I guess down, down below their chest?
Yeah.
Is it different? Does that make a difference, Doc?
No, no. For the most part, no. Generally
Okay.
speaking, no. Now, I mean, you can, and I mean that really comes down really sort of the distribution of fat cells in the body. So,
Okay. Okay.
for example, if you look at men, for example, when men gain weight, what do they gain weight at? Their stomach, their abdominal area. Why? Because this is where most of the fat cells in men are at, is in their abdominal area. That's why men get the love handles, you get the beer bellies, and all of that. Um, but for women, fat cells tend to be more dispersed throughout the body, so it tends to be kind of a little bit everywhere.
Okay.
But it does tend to be centered towards that hip, thigh area, buttocks, and obviously torso, and even the chest and stuff like that. Um, but for the most part, yes. Do some women have weight distribution just kind of have sort of a weird, and it's not necessarily weird weight distribution per se. It's just more or less the way fat cells are just dispersed in their body, where they're concentrated at, I should say. And so again, it doesn't really make much of a difference. Overweight is still overweight.
Yeah.
Obese is still obese. You
Yeah.
know,
Y'all
so,
still taking pretty much the same amount of time to get out of your little car. So,
okay.
I see that. I see that a lot. Like, God damn, man, I see people struggling. I mean, struggling to get up out of the damn. I mean, take like 5 minutes.
Well,
Struggling to get up.
I can't stress enough, X, that these campaigns we've been seeing, whether it's Dove or some of these other corporate campaigns around body positivity, they're not doing Black women a favor. I'm just gonna
Nope.
be frank with you. They're not doing Black women a favor. They're not doing Black people a favor. Period. And it's certainly not dealing with the problem of obesity in this country. There is no medical professional alive in this country right now that will sit here and tell you that body positivity is a healthy thing. No, it's not. I can go on Instagram right now, and there's no shortage of morbidly obese people on there talking about, I'm healthy, I'm fine, I have no problem. I know you're not healthy, and I know you're not fine.
Yeah, it shows.
A lot of it too is a lot of it seems to be a class issue as well.
Yeah,
I don't know if it's just information, or some people have made the argument that, hey, higher income, so you can spend money on equipment. Now granted, you don't need equipment to, there's nothing to walking or deciding to take the steps instead of the elevator, things like that you can implement. But it is a class issue in the sense of people um, who are well off seem to exercise and just in general eat healthier. I can't tell you how many people I run into who literally tell me they don't even eat fast food at all.
Mm.
Or, they buy all organic produce, all of these things.
Yeah, well, I guess I mean, of course, that matters. Where you are, where you live. the amount of money that you have, your income, whether or not you in these food deserts as they refer to them. I'm sure all of that is relevant, but I say again, if you somewhere where the only thing that's being offered is crap, there's no way eating a lot of the crap is helping.
Yeah.
There's no way
And
that's helping.
yeah. And like I said, there's still, even like I said, you can make the decision to walk, to do, calisthenics type of exercise, push ups, pull ups, if you don't want to buy a weight set, or, like I said,
And,
take these stairs instead of the elevator. There are things you can do.
yeah, and quit
You know,
eating
I
the
think that's a very
garbage. Quit
well. I
eating the
think most people
garbage
agree.
food from the bodega.
I
You
think
know,
that's a very difficult thing. And I think this kind of goes back to folks living in big cities, if you will, where I say it's kind of a catch-22. Yeah, everything is more closely, is more close together, you know, but yet it also makes people lazy because people live in big cities, but yet they still drive. You don't bike. Like this past weekend, I was in Chicago, and I had my car parked. I stayed in the hotel downtown Chicago. My car was parked in the garage most of the time.
mm.
You know, I pretty much walked everywhere.
Yeah, no, I'm
It-
I'm the same way. That's why I was kind of like, here outside of DC, I'm like, if I go in the city, I really only drive to work
yeah,
and to the grocery store. If I go into the city, I walk or take the metro in and then walk to where I'm going, because it's just a pain in the butt to drive. So when people say, in the city, yeah, I get people may not go as far, but I've never gotten living inside a major city, unless you didn't have transit, of why people would even want to drive in the first place.
yeah, no,
Yeah.
I agree with that. I do agree with that because, like I said, when I was in Chicago and obviously I grew up there, like, there really is no. I mean, yeah, do you want a car? Yeah, do you kind of need one? No, and it's just one of those things where, like, yeah, people, everyone's riding bikes. It was like 50 degrees outside in Chicago, and people are just riding bikes. It is what it is, you know. And I think that's just something that just having a healthy lifestyle is something that's not promoted, nor is it practiced regularly. And and
Nope.
and, and so, and specifically for Black women, and the reason why this is so important for Black women, because you bear children. They have to bear children. And
Absolutely.
and the healthier you are when you bear children means the less likely you are to have adverse issues during pregnancy.
Yep.
You won't have complications of pregnancy and stuff like that. Again, you wonder why you have you see so many Black women have issues because many of them weren't healthy to begin with when they became pregnant. And so, going pregnancy is a very exhausting effect on the body.
Yep.
It puts a lot of stress on the bodies of women. X, I'm sure you can speak to this because you're a father, so
Oh
you
yeah.
you know you
Oh yeah.
you know I'm sure your wife probably spoke about her.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
They'd
know,
be pretty. They'd be pretty gassed after that. They'd be pretty gassed out after
I,
that.
I, I mean, when you just see, the weight gain, the swelling, the lack of energy, all of, if you've ever been around a woman who's pregnant, you can just tell how taxing it is on the body.
yeah,
Hmm.
no, absolutely. And even after they've given birth, it takes them quite a while to recover from that because it is just such a physically taxing experience on them that it takes a bit of time for them to fully recover from that. And so again, when you're already starting at a point where you're not even healthy to begin with, then you get pregnant, then it pregnancy will just exacerbate all those other issues that were there. And I think
Yeah.
that's part of what doesn't, when these conversations come up. And again, I just think that this whole corporate movement about body positivity, I personally think is dangerous, to be honest with you. I,
And,
I
and,
don't.
and they're part of the people who created the problem also when you look at portion control
Yeah.
as well. Because, I mean, obviously, ultimately, the responsibility falls on you as the individual, but, you started to see, you know, bigger and larger portions being introduced. And what does someone do when something big, is put in front of them? They naturally gravitate for more of it.
Yeah, and and just to shift gears really quickly, because I'm not gonna be on too much longer. But to shift gears really quickly, I do wanted to mention something about obesity in Black men, and specifically just issues among with Black men. So when you think of obesity, yeah, the numbers for obesity for Black men, they're quite a bit lower than Black women. Somewhere around 30, 35,
That's what I
35,
would guess.
38%, something like that. But here's the problem. What Black men face is not necessarily an obesity crisis. Is Black men actually deal with higher rates of diabetes, believe it or not.
Mm.
And so we didn't get a chance to really I didn't get a chance to really talk about this earlier, and maybe next time I come on I'll probably talk more about this. But
Absolutely.
one of the things for Black men, and certainly when it comes to well, let's just to be frank here. When it comes to your ability to have an erection, having an erection is not just something you do to have sex. No, having an erection is actually good a good barometer for your health.
Mm.
Because it's blood flow.
Yes. And so, obviously we know as you get older that kind of wanes, that's a given. But when you're younger, certainly you should not have problems having an erection. And again, one of the major causes for erectile dysfunction in men is specifically Black men is actually diabetes.
Mm.
Now,
So
is that because when you're saying diabetes, are you referring to type 2, where it's usually an obesity driven
mm,
issue, or
mm, diabetes in general, was specifically type 2, yes. Because
okay?
that's the most prevalent form of diabetes is type 2. Type 1 is genetic, meaning it's congenital, meaning you're born with it. So so that can be helped. But type 2, which is obesity related, or they call it lifestyle diabetes. Oftentimes it's called lifestyle diabetes. But yes. So one of the telltale signs of cardiovascular issues in men um, is the inability to have and maintain an erection. And the reason I talk about this is because it was a few years back. I met a friend that I knew growing up. We were, he was like, this was like what? Uh, he was in his early 30s. Yeah, he was like 30, 31, or I think he was 30. But anyhow, he had a stroke. I didn't even know he had a stroke until, until I saw him, and when him and I were talking, and I just kind of took a closer look at him, and I asked him, I said, do you have like Bell's palsy? Because he kind of had a little slant, he kind of had a little crooked mouth or whatever. He's like, no, I had a stroke. I'm like, wow. He said, no, man. He come to find out, he's had chronic hypertension for years.
Mm.
And so, this is one of these things that as Black men, we don't even think about. And I can argue that the reasons Black men have hypertension versus Black women are quite different. For Black men, I would say is almost exclusively stress induced.
Mm.
Not necessarily from obesity, but more or less stress induced. And yes, you can inherit it from parents. Yes, you can. You're more likely to have it if you had parents who had hypertension as well.
Wow. That's
So
crazy.
yeah, that risk factor does go up if you do have parents who've had it. And so so what I'm getting at here is that when it comes to Black men and their health, Black men, I wouldn't necessarily say Black men have quote an obesity problem. yeah, it's not uncommon to go out here and see obese black men. Yeah, it's not uncommon, but it's not to the levels that we see among black women. Specifically for black men, what happens to black men? The primary issues that are affecting black men are prostate cancer, intestinal, colorectal cancers, diabetes, and hypertension, and
Mm.
chronic kidney disease. Now, across the board, diabetes is an issue for black folks, period. But it is a bit more prevalent in black men. And because diabetes not only can lead to cardiovascular issues, also leads to the something called diabetic retinopathy, which is actually where the retinas get damaged in the eyes due to the microvessels that are damaged because of diabetes, and it leads to, and if it's not caught in time or is caught in a later stage, it can lead to permanent blindness. So diabetic retinopathy is something that is actually the leading cause of blindness in working age adults. So so many adults that you see that go blind, most oftentimes the cause of that is due to diabetes and a complication of it, diabetic retinopathy. And so for black men, what's important to know here is that yeah, some of those first signs you see, this goes for brothers that don't take care of themselves, and unfortunately, a lot of that happens to be the blue collar brothers.
Yeah,
So
I know.
so
I
a
know.
lot of blue collar brothers do not take care of themselves. They have really bad diet. This is something I've seen for a long time.
I was going to ask you, Dr. Phoenix, when you were talking about the inheritance of chronic diseases.
Mhm.
Just so I'm understanding this correctly, like you were giving the example, if a woman, is overweight, she's going to have more issues with childbirth. So are you saying in that hey, if a woman is a diabetic and she's giving birth, she's not only putting herself at risk, her child is going to be predisposed genetically to it?
No, there's no evidence to support that. No, no. What I'm
Okay.
saying is that what I'm saying is that for her, it is gonna make her child is gonna make one, the pregnancy more difficult, and two, it will potentially make it more difficult for her to actually bear the child in period during childbirth.
Okay, and obviously the sense of, hey, if this woman has done that, she can pass those bad habits down. But it's not the fact that she's overweight; her child is going to be predisposed to being
No,
overweight.
no,
Okay,
no. There are certain things that have had some genetic inheritance linked to it, like schizophrenia. Certainly some evidence out there that suggests that hypertension is one of those things as well. Obviously, those are something. Those are some issues. So, but for the most part, when it comes to like women and being overweight and even having diabetes, that if you ever, for the most part, if you notice, you ever seen women who've had like really large babies, like babies that were like 10 pounds,
Hmm.
like if you ever notice, many of those women that have you ever noticed they were overweight. Many of them had gestational diabetes.
Mm.
Yeah. So there's certainly some links between that and certainly women having large children. Now, is it now if you come now we do know that obesity can be inherited. If you have obese mother, obese side of the family, yes, it becomes that much easier for you to gain that weight. Alcoholism also has an inheritance link
yep,
to it.
yep.
So
Now
so
these are the things that are not discussed that people get defensive about, but people don't realize that there are health issues and they're affecting not only them but their offspring.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, no, absolutely. And I think because so much of what gets discussed in Black America, truth be told, a lot of it is conjecture. A lot of it is just folks just kind of saying, well, this is some massive government takeover. This is 1984. They're watching you. They're watching everything you do. They're tracking you. No, this data is coming from somewhere. People
Yeah.
are not make this is not being made up. This is data that gets that is being reported. And yes, people do studies on this. And I think Black people don't do themselves no disservice. Like, with earlier talking about getting the COVID vaccine. Look, Black folks are free to do whatever as they please. I'm not telling you go out here and get your vaccine. If you want to get your vaccine, I just say I recommend it. I didn't say go out there and get it, because I know Black folks get real sensitive about the COVID vaccine, even though a lot of things Black folks are hearing is just hearsay. They heard from
Yeah.
somebody's mother's cousin's brother, uncle about this person had XYZ reaction. And again, even if you took the totality of all the adverse reactions to the vaccines, for example, it still would be not even 1% of the total people who have been given the vaccine.
Yeah, I actually have my second shot tomorrow. So no,
Mhm.
the thing I saw, the thing I never got is people made it out conspiracy. Some people were talking about the Tuskegee experiment and this and that, and I'm like, if
That's not
anything,
applicable.
I was like, if anything, right now you have a virus that is basically killing Black people at a higher rate. So if you wanted to convince me that it was some government conspiracy, if they had the vaccine and they were trying to keep it away from Black people, that would make more sense than, hey, trying to get people to sign up for it.
Well, as me and X were saying earlier, I, it is my thought that at some point there is going to no. Will there be a national mandate? Never. No, not gonna happen. But that doesn't need to happen.
Employers, schools,
Exactly.
they're already doing it.
Exactly. That's what's gonna happen.
Yeah, the
You don't
government
need.
doesn't have to do anything. It doesn't
Yeah.
have to do anything.
It's no more different than a job market. How job markets have responded over the last couple decades. Well, colleges aren't pumping out people with the necessary skills. Hey, you know, we'll do it. You know, if we're gonna say this needs to be what you have to get this job. Yeah, that's just what it is. The markets have corrected what needs to be corrected, and
And
I'm not.
yeah, and I was going to say, I know college, you have to get vaccinated with certain things to go anyway, especially if you're going to live on campus. But aren't
Yeah,
jobs probably the same way as well?
yeah, well, yeah, certain professions, like, look, I'm in the medical profession. You have to get vaccinations. Even people that are non-clinical personnel have to get the same vaccinations. You can work in a damn IT office in a major medical center, and you still have to get the same vaccinations I did. That's just the nature of what it is. Again, I'm not saying this is some massive government takeover. It never will be. The government first of all, I don't think the current president has the courage to do that. Second of all, he doesn't have to, because these institutions on their own are going to mandate it. You've already seen a number of universities out here already saying they're like, yeah, if our students are going to return, all of them are going to have it.
Yeah.
Medical
It's going
school, same thing.
it's going to be enforced one way or the other. I mean,
Yeah,
that's if you want
uh,
to do certain things, you're gonna have to papers, please.
yeah, yeah. You there's look, it just kind of is what it is. I know Black folks. I think the whole idea about the Tuskegee experiment. If I can be really honest, and I'm saying this with no malice here, but let's be honest here. Most Black folks don't know a goddamn thing about the damn Tuskegee experiment.
Yeah,
You
they
only
don't.
know it because you just heard somebody say it on a YouTube video, or you heard it repeated in social media. Most Black folks don't know a damn thing about
Yeah.
the Tuskegee experiment.
Tell them to explain it. Tell them
They
to
they they
explain what
don't
happened.
know about it, and it just becomes this. It just and two, it's an apples and oranges comparison. It really is.
Yeah.
It's not even valid. This is not something, quote, the people did as an experiment to see what happens if we give this only to Black people. Then no, then you're gonna have to explain then why you have all these variables. You got white folks, you got Asians, you got Latinos, you got black folks, you got Jews, you got goddamn everybody in the mix. Okay.
The other thing that's sad to me in all this, with all the misinformation, and some people are spreading it, is you got places like India where people are literally dying begging for oxygen. you know y- whether you're against the vaccine or not, it, just being appreciative that you live in a country where you know there that response is able to take place, and you
Yeah.
have a surplus, and other places around the world are literally begging. I mean, I'm in school right now, and one of the people in my homework group, she had to fly back home to India because she didn't elaborate too much, but a family illness. And I was like, oh, I'm sure it's something COVID related. And you've seen the pictures on TV, so it's just at some point people have to be rational. If you have some hesitancy, do some research, but it's like it can kind of be a slap in the face at a certain point.
Oh yeah. I
Well,
mean,
go ahead, X. Sorry.
no. What I was gonna say was you have, you you have this situation, all over the country, and in other countries you see, because I've seen, I've seen clips of them burning bodies where they had so many people dying, and they burnt so many bodies where they ran out of wood. They didn't even have the wood to cremate the people anymore. So it is a crisis, man. And I just want people to protect themselves, man. I want brothers to protect themselves from this COVID shit, because it is real. Trust me, 4 people in my family that I care about it, related by blood, all right, had this thing. Fortunately, all of them recovered. Fortunately, but that's not going to be everybody's story, you know. And I want you to also protect yourself sexually. Because guess what? If you protect yourself sexually, you might just be protecting yourself from COVID too. I told you before, I don't want you to have the COVID and the clap at the same time. So, I mean, I want brothers to protect themselves, man. Because I want you to stick around, because I want your black asses here watching these damn streams every Wednesday and Thursday. All right.
Mm,
All right. So I'm gonna go ahead and get final thoughts
yeah.
from both of you, brother Renaissance man. Go ahead, man. Pull the trigger.
No, like I said, I enjoyed this talk. I always enjoy chopping it up with you, Dr. Phoenix, and appreciate you setting this up, X. Very informative.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. I gotta get the good doc back in here so we can talk about some of this men's health stuff, man, which is very
Yeah.
important. Something we don't often think about either. We think about it once every 175 days.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely, brother. If you email me, I'll make time for you. So, whenever you want to set up, just email me.
Yeah, it's
All right.
gonna be soon. It's gonna be soon, Doc, within the next couple of weeks, definitely.
Okay, okay, absolutely. All I have to say is look, I know, despite, black folks have a right to be apprehensive about COVID and the vaccine, but nonetheless, you know, I'm not telling black folks to get a vaccine. I just recommend you do. Okay. At the end of the day, we're not going to be able to escape the effects of COVID, and we're certainly not going to be able to escape in our everyday lives the effects of having been vaccinated. The government. I highly doubt that at any point in this process the government actually ever have a national mandate for the vaccine. But I would not be the least bit surprised if individual uh, um, institutions and corporations start to mandate it. You know, it is just only the natural progression of things. It won't be any other way. And until black folks create something that's completely 100% independent of this society we live in, I don't think black folks have really much of a dog in this fight, to be honest.
I'd have to agree. I'd
So,
have
but
to agree.
but again, brother X, always a pleasure. This was, I very much enjoyed talking about COVID. your experience getting getting the getting the COVID vaccine, and also just talking about some general health issues in general that Black people are dealing with. I know
Yeah.
we spent a lot of time talking about Black women and some of those health issues, and again, it is just my opinion that corporations getting in on body positivity ain't doing Black women any favor.
Nope.
It is excuse me, it is hurting Black women,
Yeah,
and
they're
it's gonna be
co-signing. They're co-signing the BS.
yeah, and it's just gonna leave a lot of Black women to some early graves.
Yep, and it already has.
Yeah, and if you don't believe it, just go watch My 600 Pound Life. Those
There it
folks
is.
still had those weight loss surgeries, and many of them still died afterwards. So again, brother, thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure. Always enjoying coming on
Yeah,
and
yeah,
talking
I'm gonna
with.
hit you up. I'm gonna hit you up in a couple of weeks, Doc, because I want you to come up here and talk about some men's health stuff. The
Yeah,
sexual
yeah. If
health
you
and getting a colonoscopy and all that kind of
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah, we can definitely talk about that. When I was an undergrad, I did a lot of research around diabetes and diabetic retinopathy and stuff like that. Did a lot of stuff with the Milwaukee Health Department. So, hey, if you're interested, just shoot me an email. I'll be more than happy to come up and talk about some of these things.
Absolutely. I will, man. I appreciate you, Doc.
All right,
Always.
all right. Thank
Pe-
you so much, X. Have a good night.
Peace, brother.
All right, peace.
Yeah, the good brother Doc Phoenix, man. I mean, he always come up here. Doc Phoenix is kind of like my go-to guy because I know I can, just throw a bunch of questions at him, about all kinds of stuff. I'm gonna get him to come back up here, to talk about some men's health, man. Especially for us older guys. That's one of the reasons why I got, the quote unquote the jab, because I'm an older dude, man. I'm an old Negro. I can't I can't afford to be having all these things. I may not bounce back. I mean, I get it. I may not bounce back. Everybody in my family who got it, they got it, they bounce back, and they right back to their lives. But said I may catch that shit and be dead in 3 days. So, that's one of the reasons that I made sure I got it. So now that I have it, I'm one of the millions of people who've gotten it. And like I was telling Doc Phoenix, so far so good. I mean, I'm still able to work. I'm still doing the same shit I always do. Ain't much change. I don't feel any different. I don't, nothing. So it's business as usual. It's been 2 weeks and I haven't fell dead, on the side of the road somewhere or on a job site or on my back deck thus far. So I guess I'm gonna be all right with it. But yeah, I'm gonna get the doc back in here, man, to talk about, some men's stuff, colon cancer and diabetes in men, type 2 diabetes in men. Because we need to talk about this stuff, brothers. We do. We need to talk about our health, our physical health, our medical health, our sexual health, all that kind of stuff, man. We need to be kind of in tune with that, man, so we know what's going on, with our bodies, be able to see the red flags and know when we need to take our ass to the doctor, So I will be getting the doc back up here, I will be getting him back up here, y'all. But yeah, we're gonna go ahead, man, and close out. Oh, appreciate that, Doc Phoenix, the $20 super chat. He said, "Thank you for inviting me to discuss COVID and health issues tonight." Absolutely, man, absolutely. And I will be hitting you up, Doc. You can come in here and educate some of us about our own damn physical frame. But yeah, we're gonna go ahead and close this out, man. Good stuff tonight. It's always good stuff when the brother Doc Phoenix comes through. So nothing less is expected. I don't know what we got going on next week, y'all. I may or may not do a show because I mean, like tonight, that's why we started late. Because man, I had just got in, y'all. I mean, I was on the road today, boy, and it was a tough day today. Today was a tough day. Um, because Thursdays I don't usually work in the mornings. In the mornings I usually do paperwork and stuff, and usually in the afternoon if I have something, I take care of it in the afternoon. And man, today was a doozy this afternoon, man. I didn't get here. All right. I did not get back to the house till like, oh shit, it was like 5 to 9 when I walked through the door. And that's because I was speeding, all the way from my last damn mobile call. I was speeding to hurry up and try to get home. Yeah, so I don't even know. Depending on what I got going on next week, y'all, I may or may not do a show. I have no idea because my schedule's been crazy, man. Y'all know I went to Florida a couple weeks ago with my wife, and we came back, man, and shit, I have been working nonstop ever since we got back. one day, I've had one day off. I've even had to work. I usually don't work Fridays, but I've only taken one Friday off since I've been back from Florida, y'all. Only one that I've taken off since I've been back from Florida. Um, I may not even be able to take tomorrow off because I got a few things that I have to do. So nonstop, y'all. Nonstop ever since I've been back. Been crazy, boy. But yeah, so next week I don't even know if I'm gonna do a show. It all depends. All depends, man. Because I know I'm gonna be on the road hot and heavy next week. So Wednesday night may not happen at all. Because I may not get back here till 9:30, 10 o'clock, that kind of thing. So I don't even know. But I appreciate everybody, man, for coming out tonight, man. As always, you good folks, man. The good folks that hang out in the chat and good folks who sit out there and watch. I always appreciate y'all, man. I never take y'all lightly, man. I never have, and I never will. Shout out to Brother Renaissance for coming up and contributing to the conversation, and also a special shout out to the good Doc Phoenix for coming through tonight, man, and dropping something on us as always. And I'm trying to get the good doctor in here as well, Dr. Ford. I want to get the doc in here. She was in the chat tonight. Hopefully I can get her up here and we can talk about some of these medicines as well. All right. All right. So with that, I will leave you good folks with 3 words, like I always do.
Open your mind.
The good doctor is in the house. The good doctor.
Open your mind.
In the house. The good doctor in the house.
Open your mind.
Only from T.P.O.T. Media. Open your mind. Open your mind.
Only, only, only from TPOT Media. Open your mind. 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 O
your mind.